Chapter 337. The Origin of Yin-Yang Technique. In the dense forest, black mist surged violently. After a long while, it gradually returned to Qin Feng's palm. "Brat, your luck is too good. Not only did you refine the ancient desolate spiritual flame, but you also obtained the underworld elixir." As the demon eye spoke, he suddenly paused and said in shock, "You refined the ancient desolate spiritual flame and the underworld elixir? That's not right. These two types of energy are polar opposite. How can they exist in the same body?" "That's because I've already activated the yin-yang force in my body," said Qin Feng. The demon eye was shocked. "You've activated the yin-yang force? Let me see it." Hearing this, Qin Feng mobilized the yang qi and yin qi in his qi si. A moment later, in his hands, a white spirit energy jumped like a flame. It was visible to the naked eye that the space around the white spirit energy was constantly twisting. As for his other palm, black spiritual energy filled the air as boundless cold air rose from it. Specks of white crystals appeared in the air. The two palms slowly moved closer to each other. Suddenly, the black and white spiritual energy vibrated and released a strong repulsive force. In an instant, Qin Feng's palm was shaken open and blood flowed out. He stared at the black and white spiritual energy without blinking. His heart was ruthless. He ignored the repulsive force and fiercely compressed them together. In that battle, he roughly understood what the yin-yang force was. Qin Feng took this opportunity to completely understand it. His palms were separated by a palm's width. The black and white spiritual energy were like two beasts that couldn't tolerate each other as they tore and devoured each other. Every time they came into contact, the space would distort and Qin Feng's body would constantly tremble from the confrontation between the two. Finally, his body gradually stabilized because he had found the feeling and understood what the yin-yang force was. He no longer forced the two spiritual energy to come closer. Instead, he felt the inexplicable fluctuations produced by the confrontation between the black and white spiritual energy. At a certain moment, Qin Feng suddenly opened his eyes. There were black and white lights circling in his eyes at the same time. After a dozen seconds, they slowly disappeared. At the same time, Qin Feng's palms suddenly clasped together. After a while, they slowly separated. In his palms, the black and white spiritual energy were like two small black and white tadpoles, head and tail hugging each other. A strange fluctuation was emitted. "Kid, you've actually used the yin-yang force to this extent." At this moment, the demon eye was really shocked. The yin-yang force was too mysterious. Since ancient times, not many people had been able to completely control it. But Qin Feng had been able to do it in a few years. "Old devil, do you know what yin-yang technique is?" Qin Feng stared at the yin-yang embrace diagram in his hands and asked. "This move is indeed the yin-yang force." The demonic eye was silent for a moment before replying. "Everyone has this technique, because as long as one is a living being, they carry the power of yin and yang to balance themselves. However, the power of yin and yang is too ethereal, and there is no way to control it. Or rather, this technique has been severed. However, once the yin and yang in the body are activated, the yin-yang technique will automatically manifest." "Kid, how did you cultivate the yin-yang force?" Qin Feng nodded silently when he heard this. He finally understood why Qin Wentian suddenly obtained the yin-yang art. After a moment of silence, he said, "I've only managed to sense the yin-yang in my body in a place filled with good fortune." "Impossible. It's impossible to make the yin-yang force in the human body appear, let alone the yin-yang force." The demon eye said with certainty, "There are some special energies that carry the yin-yang force. However, they can only resonate with the yin-yang force at a certain point of balance. It's impossible to control it." "What if I was cultivating the water god technique and the fire god technique?" The demon eye paused and said in surprise, You got the fire god technique." Qin Feng nodded. "I was just lucky." TSK TSK. The demon eye was speechless. He didn't know what to say. This guy's luck was too good. The 5 elements technique had been incomplete for a long time. This guy, on the other hand, got 2 in a few years. Water is yin, fire is yang. It's reasonable that you can control the yin-yang force in your body. The demon eye nodded and sighed. I didn't expect you to experience so much in these few years. The fire god technique, ancient spiritual desolate flame, yellow spring pill. It's really amazing. Qin Feng thought about it. He originally wanted to tell the demon eye about the inheritance of the Dark Tower. However, he changed his mind. He and the demon eye were still enemies. He couldn't tell him everything. Let me see the power of your yin-yang force, the demon eye said. Qin Feng nodded and flicked his finger. The yin-yang embrace dart shot out. Under his control, it didn't have much destructive power. It just gently hugged a tree. In an instant, that part of the tree trunk was corroded. Then, the big tree that the two of them could barely hug collapsed because its roots had been completely corroded. What a powerful corrosive power! The demon eye sighed. Qin Feng smiled. He had finally comprehended the concept of yin and yang coexisting, manifesting the yin and yang form. This corrosive energy was even more terrifying than before. It seems that you have grown a lot in these few years. Qin Feng nodded. Indeed, he had grown a lot in these few years. He was no longer the rookie who needed the demon eye's protection. By the way, have you sensed that there is another demon eye in this world? Qin Feng suddenly asked. The demon eye was silent for a long time before he said, Indeed, I have come into contact with it twice. I had already woken up the second time. Boy, you'd better not come into contact with that girl. I can only seal that evil power for 10 years. After 10 years, it will erupt. You won't be able to save that girl. The demon eye warned. Qin Feng's expression froze. He slowly clenched his fist. After a long time, he slowly released it. There were still 10 years. Who knew how much he would grow in 10 years? He was confident that he could resist the demon eye in Luqiu Saishua's body by then. You had already woken up by then? Qin Feng was stunned. He immediately scolded, Then why didn't you take action earlier? Would these things still happen? If you needed my help for everything, would you still need to grow? Do you only want to become strong because you want to protect your family and your sister? If you don't have these, don't you have other pursuits in life? The demon eye said with a stern tone. You have to walk your own path. Don't expect others to pave the way for you. Others can help you for a while, but they can't help you forever. Qin Feng was silent for a while before he nodded and said with a smile, Old demon, to be honest, I don't really admire you. However, I agree with what you said. Hoping for others is what a coward does. You have to protect the important things yourself. You can't rely on others. Qin Feng clenched his fist and said softly, I don't want to experience that kind of situation a second time. Very good. The demon eye said, It's time to leave. The road ahead won't be easy. Chapter 338. 9 Nether Snake. Qin Feng walked toward the 3 of them and checked them. He found that they were only unconscious and that there was nothing wrong with their bodies. Qin Feng woke them up one by one and found that they had fallen into a very strange kind of sleep. It took him a lot of effort to wake them up. Qin Feng, we're not dead yet? Jing Wei opened his eyes and saw Qin Feng. He was shocked and quickly jumped up. Then he revealed a strange expression. He had been seriously injured and was on the verge of death, but now he was completely fine. Tan Xian was also surprised when he woke up. They had almost died and had been swept away by the black wave, losing consciousness. He thought they were dead, but he didn't expect them to still be alive. Moreover, they were alive and well. Not only are we fine, but our strength has also increased a lot. Tan Xian moved around and revealed a look of shock. Qin Feng nodded. They had all reached the late stage of the spirit detecting realm, and he didn't know why they had increased. He only knew what had happened later from the mouth of the demon eye. Qin Feng, how did we survive? Tan Xian looked at Qin Feng and asked. Qin Feng didn't know how to explain, so he vaguely said, perhaps it was the people from the Saint Ruin. Tan Xian and Jing Wei didn't say more. No matter what, they hadn't died, their bodies were fine, and their strength had increased quickly. That was enough. Uncle, I'm hungry. This was the first thing Big Flower Explosion said when she opened her eyes and saw Qin Feng. Qin Feng smiled and rubbed Big Flower Explosion's head. He felt a bit of heartache. This matter had nothing to do with her, but she had been dragged into it in the end. In particular, when she had shouted, "I'm in pain," Qin Feng's heart had ached. No matter what, Big Flower Explosion was still a child. Okay. Qin Feng went to hunt a spirit beast nearby and roasted it. After a hearty meal, they set off towards the Nine Spirits mountain range. In less than half a day, they entered the valley. Qin Feng asked them to wait outside. No matter what, the Nine Spirit mountain range was a forbidden zone for all living beings. He had only been able to enter because of special circumstances. As for the others, Qin Feng didn't want them to take the risk. After entering the forest of the Nine Spirits mountain range, Qin Feng found that existence. Are you leaving? Suddenly, an indifferent voice sounded. Qin Feng nodded and said, I will fulfill my promise and take Senior away. The gloomy aura in the forest was oppressive. Black fog rolled, and a blurry figure appeared, reflecting a pair of emotionless and cold eyes. A chill rose in Qin Feng's heart. This was the first time he had seen the true body of this existence. This caused his heart to tremble. Even though he knew that this existence would not harm him, he still could not suppress the fear in his heart. After all, this was a place where humans didn't dare to set foot in. It was known as a forbidden zone for life. Even if he had a deal with this person and helped him a few times, this kind of person wasn't easy to come into contact with. However, he wasn't worried. After all, the demonic eye had already awakened. That demonic fluctuation must be related to you, the existence in the black fog said. Qin Feng was stunned, but soon understood. He was referring to the time when he had been possessed. Thus, he nodded but didn't say anything. It is indeed a very evil power. There is only an evil heart and no evil power. The key is how to use this power. Qin Feng's right hand was covered in black light as the demonic eye spoke. You've already awakened? The existence revealed a puzzled expression. The demonic eye smiled and said strangely, What kind of deal did you make with this brat? You even told him about the ancient, desolate spiritual flame. You are after something big. It's just a casual move. Why are you lodging in his body? My goal is different from yours, the demonic eye said with a smile. Is that so? The existence snorted. The demonic eye released a dark light and slowly revolved in Qin Feng's palm. Feeling that the atmosphere was not right, Qin Feng quickly contacted the demonic eye secretly. Old devil, what's the situation? I'm afraid this guy has other plans for you. Brat, be careful, the demonic eye said. Qin Feng was stunned. These two old monsters, one coveted his body, and the other had great plans for him. This gave Qin Feng a headache. What kind of things did he come into contact with? Do you know what his goal is? Qin Feng asked in his heart. I'm not sure yet, but in my opinion, it shouldn't be anything good. The demonic eye replied. This caused Qin Feng to be shocked. Because of the ancient desolate spiritual flame, Qin Feng's impression of this existence had improved by quite a bit. However, after the reminder of the demonic eye, he realized that he was still too naive. When dealing with this kind of old monster, he had accidentally thrown himself into the mix. What do we do now? Ignore him? Qin Feng asked. You decide for yourself. Qin Feng was silent for a moment, then said in his heart, No matter what plans he has for me, at least he won't show it at this stage. So, I'm safe for the time being. He might be of use in the 100,000 barren mountains, and I promised him before. You've grown a lot and can analyze problems. The demonic eye nodded and said, this guy's target might not be you. Hearing this, Qin Feng let out a sigh of relief. He stepped forward and said, Senior, I'm going to leave this place. According to our previous agreement, I've come to take you away from the primordial land. I'm not asking you to take me away. The existence shook his head. After a long silence, a palm-sized black coffin flew out. Take it and leave. Qin Feng was startled. Looking at the mini coffin floating in front of him, he said, Senior wants me to take this thing away. 9 nether snake. The demonic eye was also startled. 9 nether snake, what's that? Qin Feng asked in his heart. Good stuff, at least it's good stuff for you. The demonic eye replied to Qin Feng, then said with a laugh, You gave the 9 nether snake to this brat. I really can't see through your plans. This wind of his is very strong. Forming this good karma today might be of great benefit to me in the future, the existence replied. Is it worth spending so much capital for the sake of a better future? It's just a casual game of chess. It's not like I haven't played it before, but it was all wasted in the end. The existence in the darkness sighed and said, As an existence like me, there's nothing I can't do. The demonic eye remained silent for a while, then said, Maybe you're right. Maybe. I hope this wind won't stop so easily. But with you here, I think the situation will be different in the future. Qin Feng was confused by the conversation between the two. What was going on? Were the conversations of experts always so profound? Let's go. The demonic eye said. Just like that? Qin Feng was stunned. It was so simple. He looked at the existence in the darkness and moved his mouth. That light won't harm you, and I won't provoke that old monster on your body. Let's go. The existence seemed to know what Qin Feng was thinking. Chapter 339. Heaven Mountain City. After meeting up with Tan Xian and the others, the 4 of them did not stop at all. They quickly made their way to the border. The 100,000 barren mountains were boundlessly vast. The beast race that posed the greatest threat to the primitive world lived there, but no one knew just how many species of beasts there were. In order to defend against the invasion of the beast race, the capital had set up many checkpoints on the border with a large number of soldiers. Heaven Mountain Pass was to the south of the capital, where 2 mountain ranges intersected. Due to the environment, it had become a natural stronghold that was easy to defend and difficult to attack. Extremely cold astral winds filled Heaven Mountain Pass all year round. Even regular spiritual detection experts would not dare to come in contact with the astral wind. The mountains on the 2 sides of the stronghold were abnormally smooth, as if they had been cleaved apart by a sharp axe. Coupled with the fact that the mountains were extremely majestic, even some lesser Heaven Realm experts could not directly fly over. Heaven Mountain Pass stood at the most important location of the stronghold. This was the only place within 10 kilometers of the stronghold that could be passed through. Outside of the Heaven Mountain Pass was a grassland that stretched as far as the eye could see. If one stood at a high spot in the fortress, one would be able to see any activity on this grassland. However, the grassland was currently covered by a vast black fog. Under the black fog, one could vaguely hear deafening roars. A murderous aura that soared to the sky spread, causing the expressions of everyone on the Heaven Mountain Pass to become grave. On the vast land, countless figures stood on the ground, and a strong and ferocious aura permeated the air. There were even more figures in the sky. There were winged silver dragons, green-feathered condors, and some flying spiritual beasts of unknown shapes. Every single one of them was extremely powerful. As energy gathered, it was like a multicolored ocean. It was resplendent, but it also gave off a heavy, oppressive presence. A huge, black city several thousand meters tall sat at the end of the land. It was majestic and filled with the presence of time. This was the most important line of defense between the primitive world and the 100,000 barren mountains, Heaven Mountain City. Densely packed figures stood on the city walls and in the sky. They gave off extremely terrifying, oppressive pulses. This place was used to defend against the invasion of the beast race, so it was obviously heavily guarded. There was a reason why Qin Feng chose to break out of the encirclement here. During this period of time, the primitive land and the beasts often fought, and this was the place where the battles were the most intense. Logically speaking, Qin Feng and the others shouldn't have chosen this place. After all, they were going to fight the beasts, and it was going to be a large-scale battle. If they weren't careful, they would die. Under normal circumstances, no one would choose this place, but Qin Feng was different. He had spiritual force, which was a natural counter to the beast clan, and he was also very familiar with using the divine dragon technique. Once the might of the divine dragon was released, not many spirit beasts could withstand it. He had already reached the late stage of the spirit detecting realm and was infinitely close to the small heaven realm. Normal rank 5 spirit beasts wouldn't be able to defend against him. Furthermore, there weren't many spirit beasts at this level in the outer region of the 100,000 barren mountains. Whether it was in the primitive lands or the 100,000 barren mountains, lesser heaven realm experts and 5th-grade spirit beasts were the core forces. As for Qin Feng and the others, they were all capable of killing minor heaven realm experts. Now that their strength had increased, their battle prowess had naturally increased by a notch. Minor heaven realm experts and rank 5 spirit beasts were no threat to them. As for Qin Feng, with his divine dragon technique and spiritual force, no spirit beasts other than rank 5 spirit beasts could stop him. This was one of the reasons why he dared to enter the 100,000 barren mountains. Of course, it didn't mean that an expert of his level could enter the 100,000 barren mountains, but that he was forced to. There was no way out if he continued to stay here. Moreover, the demon I had awakened, so it was much safer. The Imperial Capital's experts are all fighting the spirit beasts over there. This is a good opportunity for us, Tan Xian said. Everyone nodded and then lay down in the grass, quietly waiting for an opportunity. As they waited, the battle on the other side also entered a state of incandescence. In front of Heaven Pass City, a black storm began to sweep, quickly pushing toward the city. "Archers, get ready!" an expert on the city wall shouted. Row after row of archers held huge black crossbows and pulled their bows to a full moon. Suddenly, sharp black arrows pierced through the void like a swarm of locusts. The arrowheads of these black arrows were golden and had patterns on them. As they rotated, a powerful tearing force burst forth. Without a doubt, these arrows were enough to kill ordinary spirit-detecting experts. Poochie, Poochie, the dense black arrows shot into the spirit beast horde, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Screams and roars of beasts resounded at this moment. Spirit beasts fell from the black storm, some of them turned into mutilated corpses. Kill! The black storm let out a deafening roar as the spirit beasts with huge bodies released terrifying energy fluctuations, forming a huge black energy ball that continued to push forward. Activate the formation! Buzz! Around the city wall, beams of light shot out. Spiritual light flickered and intertwined, like a huge energy gouge that was inverted on the huge Heaven Pass City. Boom! 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 One attack after another landed on the energy barrier, and the huge energy barrier trembled. Densely packed ripples spread out like waves, spreading from the front of the city gate to the entire energy barrier. Attack together, attack in one direction. In the black storm, cold and blood-red eyes flashed as they waved their strongest attacks. Colorful energy gathered in one place, forming a black beam of light that was hundreds of feet long. In the next moment, as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting, a huge roar resounded through the world. Clearly, powerful spirit beasts had gained intelligence and even transformed into humans to form an army of spirit beasts to attack Heaven Pass. At this moment, the world lost its color and the sun and moon were silent. Only the collision could be heard. Spatial fragments danced in the air and mushroom clouds bloomed one after another. Huge black holes appeared in the collision. Indescribable destructive fluctuations spread out crazily, causing the entire Heaven Pass city to tremble violently. On the energy barrier, it was like boiling water that was constantly spreading, affecting the entire barrier. Attack again. Terrifying attacks gathered in one place, bombarding the great array of Heaven Mountain City continuously. On the energy barrier, ripples spread out crazily. It was as if waves were sweeping out, each wave stronger than the last. After more than 10 consecutive bombardments, a small crack quietly appeared on the energy barrier. Poochie. In the city, the people operating the formation paled and their bodies trembled. What's going on? Have these spirit beasts gone mad? The leader operating the formation shouted. He was puzzled. Why were the spirit beasts so crazy today? In the past, it was just a small fight, but this time, they seemed to be serious. They were determined to break through. We must hold on. Our reinforcements are coming. Boom. Just as he finished speaking, his body shook violently. An arrow of blood spurted out from his mouth, and then he fell limply to the ground. Poochie, numerous figures fell to the ground one after another, wailing in agony. Chapter 340. Killing their way out of Heaven Mountain City. The moment the great city barrier formation was shattered, nearly half of the people in the city vomited blood and fell to the ground, losing their ability to fight. Soldiers, follow me into battle to stop the spirit beasts. Behind us is our home. Do you want to see your loved ones buried in the belly of the spirit beasts? Or follow me to defend our home with our lives? Defend our home with our lives. Shocking cries rang out in the city, and high fighting spirits swept through the world. Following that, terrifying figures burst out and collided heavily with the army of spirit beasts. In just one clash, countless people and spirit beasts exploded with bloody light, and were crushed on the spot. Blood rained down like a rain of blood. In some areas, even more terrifying energy fluctuations erupted. Many people and spirit beasts exploded on the spot, and blood dyed the sky red. What was bloody, what was tragic, what was the road to hegemony was filled with corpses, and what was the mournful wails of war. This moment was a true portrayal of it. What was war? This was bloody, tragic, and cruel. Death was on display at this moment. Human and beast lives were as worthless as grass. So tragic? Qin Feng and the others who were watching from the rear were all shocked. The Heaven Pass city with its terrifying defense was actually broken through. Everyone's eyes were bloodshot as they desperately tried to kill the spirit beasts in front of them. No one was righteous and no one was innocent. They were just sad chess pieces played by fate. Some people wanted to stop chaos by killing, and naturally, there were also people who wanted to start chaos by killing. Those who were killed would stop violence by killing. On the chessboard, no chess piece was innocent. There was no distinction between good and evil. They were just performing their duties in their positions. The spirit beast army clearly had super high-level spirit beasts overseeing it. They attacked in an orderly manner, and soon, Heaven Pass City's side began to retreat. As more and more Heaven Realm experts fell, Heaven Pass City's side was gradually losing. It's about time, Qin Feng said, and was about to take action. Wait. Tan Xian stopped Qin Feng and sneered. Heaven Pass is an important fortress. How can it be broken so easily? Qin Feng was startled for a moment before he nodded. The Tan family used to be a major force in the Imperial City, so they should have some understanding of the Imperial City's defenses. As expected, just as Heaven Pass City was about to fall, a dark army suddenly appeared. These people had strong combat abilities and were decisive. Every time they attacked, a spirit beast would fall. This is the Dark Army. Every important stronghold will set up such an army for emergency use. Tan Xian smiled. Qin Feng nodded. Fortunately, they hadn't moved out yet. Otherwise, they would have attracted the Dark Race Army's attack. With the deployment of the Dark Army and their participation in the war, Qin Feng and the others could not wait any longer. His mental power enveloped everyone and they disappeared into the air, quickly running towards Heaven Pass City. As long as they were out of this fortress, they would be free to do whatever they wanted. No matter how strong the imperial capital was, they would not be able to reach this side. Although the mental power enveloped the four of them, it was inevitable that some fluctuations would leak out. However, in this large-scale war, neither humans nor spirit beasts would pay attention to it. After all, no one would pay too much attention to the obscure fluctuations in the void. The few of them moved quickly at the edge of the battlefield. In addition, he faintly displayed the might of the divine dragon, causing many spirit beasts to avoid this area out of instinctive fear. They reached the front of the city without any mishaps. The gate there had already collapsed, and the space was vast. Qin Feng's group avoided some experts and quickly rushed out of the city. However, at this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air was heard. It was the attack of a powerful mental power master. He felt that something was wrong. Qin Feng withdrew his mental power and sent it back. That person staggered from the shock. Qin Feng. That person immediately revealed a shocked expression. Qin Feng's name resounded like thunder in the primitive lands. There was no one who did not know of him. The higher-ups had also ordered them to pay attention at all times because they were worried that Qin Feng would escape into the 100,000 barren mountains. However, the spirit beast army had succeeded today, so they did not pay attention. They did not expect this monster to really want to break into the 100,000 barren mountains. Soldiers, Qin Feng is here. Follow me and capture them, the mental power master shouted. Immediately, many people gathered with blood-stained weapons. They stared at Qin Feng's group with murderous intent. Since we've been discovered, there's no need to hide. Jing Wui held deicide in his hand with a cold gaze. Tan Xian's body also trembled slightly. The heaven-slaughtering spear appeared in his hand. With a light stroke, it caused the air to explode. Before leaving, they also wanted to have a good fight. Big Flower Explosion's eyes were green. She clenched her small fists, and dark green scales could be seen faintly. Boom! The battle was on the verge of breaking out. Sword Qi swept out and the spear vibrated. More than 10 warriors were killed on the spot. The 4 of them each had the ability to kill a small heavenly realm elite alone, let alone these people. Qin Feng mobilized his mental power and formed a yin-yang fusion formation. He rushed toward the upper earthly rank mental power master. This was the only elite in the area who could rival a small heavenly realm elite. The mental power master shouted. His mental power swept out and formed some kind of formation. It collided with the yin-yang fusion formation. As soon as they came into contact, he was sent flying. His face was filled with shock. His mental power level was clearly higher than his opponent. How could there be such a huge gap? Qin Feng was also shocked by his opponent's weakness. However, he quickly understood that this was a mental power master from the imperial capital. He probably did not have the spiritual outer coffin, which was known as a mental power master's death talisman. Naturally, his combat power was greatly reduced. Today, I'll take your life first. Qin Feng's eyes were sharp. He controlled the yin-yang fusion formation to attack his opponent. Boom! Another small heavenly realm elite was approaching. Big Flower Explosion! Qin Feng shouted. He separated a strand of mental power and carried Big Flower Explosion's body into the air. Big Flower Explosion Fist! Big Flower Explosion shouted. All of a sudden, the air exploded. The small heavenly realm elite was sent flying. He looked at Big Flower Explosion in disbelief. He was actually seriously injured by such a little girl. In his depression, coupled with the fact that he was severely injured, he directly fainted. What was even more tragic was that a rank 3 spirit beast approached and swallowed him. Bang! After an intense collision, the mental power master was sent flying. His body was covered in blood. He was seriously injured. I don't want to accept this. Our elites are all held up. He roared angrily. His eyes were red. He was extremely unwilling. Heaven Mountain City's defense was very strong, and there were many elites. If Qin Feng dared to break through here, they could kill him with a flick of their fingers. But now they were fighting with the spirit beast. Most of the elites were held up. Even now, many people did not know that Qin Feng, the great criminal of the imperial capital, was right under their noses. And there was nothing they could do. Poochie! Qin Feng flashed and cut the mental power master's neck. Blood gushed out. Behind him, several streams of light streaked across the sky, making sharp sounds. The ground shook violently. Obviously, reinforcements from other directions had arrived. We should go. Imperial capital, primitive land. Qin Feng will be back. Looking deeply at the primitive land behind Heaven Pass City, Qin Feng did not stay any longer. He quickly led a few people out of the city. His mental power and dragon aura burst out at the same time, forcing the spirit beasts to stay away. Chapter 341. Spirit in the Dark Forest. Qin Feng's group of 4 shuttled quickly. Their spiritual energy permeated their bodies, causing them to disappear into the air. They traveled unimpeded for dozens of miles before stopping. Qin Feng withdrew his spiritual energy. He could not afford to use it for such a long time. The 4 of them hid under a waterfall and used the water god technique to recover their energy. Half an hour later, everyone had recovered to their peak. Qin Feng withdrew the power of water and flew out of the pool under the waterfall. Tan Xian looked around and said, "This should be the periphery of the 100,000 barren mountains. There shouldn't be any powerful spirit beasts here. However, if we continue to go deeper, I'm afraid we will encounter many spirit beasts." Qin Feng nodded slightly. The 4 of them were not familiar with the 100,000 barren mountains at all. They had no sense of direction and did not know where the more powerful spirit beasts were. That was where the larger spirit beasts gathered. They would need to slowly explore and move forward. It's going to be difficult to pass through here. Jing Wui was speechless. Although entering the 100,000 barren mountains would allow them to escape the pursuit of the imperial capital, there was still a terrifying situation waiting for them. However, compared to the imperial capital, they preferred this place. Let's slowly explore and move forward. Fortunately, they were not ordinary people. Jing Wui and Tan Xian had wilderness survival skills, concealment, ambush, and a keen sense of danger. They were far better than others. The exploding flower should be some kind of spirit beast. When she entered this place, she was like a dragon entering the sea. Her ability to sense powerful spirit beasts was extraordinary. Sometimes, Qin Feng and the rest did not notice it, but she could sense it and avoid it. With Tan Xian and Jing Wui scouting the terrain and surveying the danger, identifying the direction, and the exploding flower's special ability to sense spirit beasts. In addition, Qin Feng's dragon god's prestige and spiritual energy suppression. They walked for hundreds of miles without encountering any danger. It could be said that they were the best combination. Each of them performed their own duties and maximized their abilities. In the 100,000 barren mountains, where spirit beasts were everywhere, it was as if they were entering an uninhabited land. A depth of several hundred kilometers was something that even 9th stage Heaven Realm Masters wouldn't dare to enter, but they had done it. At this depth, they could be considered to have entered the middle latitude of the 100,000 barren mountains. Many powerful spirit beasts appeared. This kind of strength was not individual strength, but the appearance of a group. Here, they would sometimes see gigantic crocodiles in the distant valleys. There were at least several hundred of them, and there were even more in the water. In a forest, many spirit monkeys were hanging on the treetops, swaying back and forth. Thousands of single-horned wolves could also be seen hunting large spirit beasts that were many times stronger than them. These races all had a strong sense of territory. Any intruder would be wiped out by them at the first moment. When Qin Feng and the other three entered this place, they became even more careful. These spirit beasts were very powerful, far from being comparable to those scattered spirit beasts. Nevertheless, Qin Feng's control over his mental power had reached an appalling level. In addition, his mental power could cover his body. Spirit beasts were born with a weak sense of mental power, so he did not encounter any danger. The four of them moved very slowly. Usually, after half an hour of infiltration, they would find a place to hide. When Qin Feng's mental power recovered, they would move out again. After a few exchanges, they narrowly passed through this tribe's territory. However, before they could breathe a sigh of relief, there was a sudden beast roar from behind. More than a dozen fire spiritual leopards with red fur rushed out of the dense forest, staring at Qin Feng and the others with malice and violence. Damn it, the fire spiritual leopard's hearing is extremely sharp. We were discovered by them, Jingwei said. Let's finish the battle quickly. Qin Feng rushed out immediately, wanting to finish the battle quickly and not let the commotion spread. Tan Xian and Jingwei quickly followed and released their spiritual power. The three of them worked together, and in less than 3 minutes, all the fire spiritual leopards were killed. However, their expressions changed because in the distance, fiery light overflowed into the sky. Baleful energy pervaded the air as a large group of fire spirit leopards charged over. Run quickly! The few of them ran quickly and maximized their speed. However, the fire spiritual leopards were natural speed-type spiritual beasts. In terms of speed and agility, there were almost no spiritual beasts that could match them, especially on the ground. Therefore, even if they were weaker than Qin Feng and the others, they caught up quickly. Qin Feng formed the yin-yang integration formation and quickly attacked the back. At the same time, he divided his mental power into various sharp weapons and swept them out. Suddenly, the beasts behind them roared and screamed. However, this angered them even more, and they desperately chased after Qin Feng and the others. In the end, Qin Feng even used the Dragon God's power, but it was not effective. After all, there were too many fire spiritual leopards. His Dragon God's power alone could not achieve much. Left with no choice, the four of them could only run for their lives. Roar! The fire spiritual leopards caught up from behind and closed the distance. Each of them opened their mouths and shot out energy beams. The four of them quickly dodged. As a result, their speed was even slower and the fire spiritual leopards surrounded them. You guys go first. Qin Feng let out a loud shout and stopped at the end. His mental energy transformed into numerous sharp mental weapons that whistled and surged around him, causing the void to tremble unceasingly. We're just passing by. We have no intention of disturbing you. Qin Feng's eyes were cold. He used the Dragon God's power to the extreme, and the dragon's power filled the air. Roar! However, it was useless. The fire spiritual leopards quickly jumped up and swooped down on him. You're courting death. Qin Feng's eyes were cold. The sharp weapons shot out and pierced through their heads. Although Qin Feng's mental power could suppress the spiritual beasts, there were too many fire spiritual leopards and they were too fast. He could not aim at them one by one and could only shoot at random. Boom! Suddenly, there was a flash of fire and a fire spiritual leopard rushed out from the bushes like a flash of red lightning. In an instant, it was close to Qin Feng. Its sharp claws shone with a cold light and it grabbed at Qin Feng's head. Poochie! However, at this moment, its body suddenly stopped and froze in midair. A long spear had pierced through its head. Ha! We've escaped here together. How can we let you face the danger alone? Jingwei laughed. His saber chi swept out and killed a few fire spiritual leopards that were charging at Qin Feng. Qin Feng was helpless. At this point, they could only fight and escape. We're almost out of the territory of the fire spiritual leopards. As long as we get out of here, their pursuit will not be so fierce. The four of them retreated as they fought. Suddenly, the fire spiritual leopards roared angrily behind them. At the same time, an extremely strong pressure spread out. Peak of the 5th level spiritual beast. Qin Feng and the others' faces changed. They were not afraid of such spiritual beasts, but it would take some time to deal with them. In the territory of the fire spiritual leopards, they could not afford to waste time. This was because more and more powerful fire spiritual leopards would attack them. However, at this moment, the fire spiritual leopards that surrounded them suddenly retreated. What's going on? Did the 5th level fire spiritual leopards give the order to retreat? Qin Feng was puzzled. We should be out of the territory of the fire spiritual leopards, Tan Xian said with uncertainty. The three of them looked at each other and were puzzled. Even if they had left the territory of the fire spiritual leopards, they had killed so many of them. The other party should not have retreated so easily. Just as they were puzzled, Big Explosion suddenly exclaimed, "Uncle, that sister is so beautiful!" Qin Feng and the other two swiftly looked over. Immediately, their pupils violently shrunk. Chapter 342. Capturing the demon. On a tree branch not far away, a figure could be seen. This was a humanoid creature, causing Qin Feng and the other two to be shocked. There were actually humans in the 100,000 barren mountains? How was this possible? But upon closer inspection, their pupils shrank. Although it was humanoid, there was a pair of wings on its back. These wings were not formed by spiritual power but carried by its body. The wings were slightly transparent and emitted a milky white light. As they flapped slowly, they created spirals of air of various sizes. It was a little girl. Just by looking at her appearance, she looked very lively and cute. She looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. She had soft blue hair that extended to her arms. Her eyes were a dazzling blue, like a burning blue flame. What shocked them the most was that other than her wings, she looked like a normal human. But there was something special about her. Her ears were long and sharp. Fairy race. The three of them immediately recognized the girl. She was not a human but an fairy. She had wings and pointed ears. These were the unique characteristics of the fairies. There were some legends about the fairies in the primitive land. The most popular one was that the fairies used to be humans, but their bloodline mutated. In the end, they broke away from the human race and became a different race. Because of this mutation, they loved forests and mountains, so they lived in seclusion in the 100,000 barren mountains. Because of this mutation, this race was extremely arrogant. Not only did they not call themselves humans, but they also hated humans. They thought that humans were the lowest race and they were the superior ones. Therefore, in a long time ago, a war broke out between the human race and the fairies. Because the fairies were few in number, they were defeated in the end. From then on, they lived in the 100,000 barren mountains and never appeared in front of the world again. This was just a popular saying. There was another saying that the fairies were a product of nature. They were born from the power of the heavens and earth, and were blessed by the heavens. They loved nature and were forest fairies. They hated humans and thought that humans were the most failed products of the heavens and earth, and should be destroyed. They especially hated humans who entered the forest to hunt spirit beasts. In their view, spirit beasts were also a product of nature, and were part of the forest. The actions of humans were evil in their eyes. Therefore, they hated humans very much. There was also another saying that the elves were the monsters of the forest, born from the essence of the sun and the moon. They were the leader of all creatures, the highest level of creatures, and were said to be the existence closest to the gods. No matter what, elves were mysterious and the most dangerous creatures to humans because they were infinitely close to humans in every aspect. Humans and elves could not coexist. Therefore, when they recognized that this girl was an elf, they were all stunned. This was because the legends about elves were only spread by word of mouth, and they had never seen one before. There were legends of elves in the 100,000 barren mountains, but they never thought that they would meet them here. After being stunned for a moment, the three of them reacted at the same time and quickly rushed toward the elf, wanting to quickly suppress it. The fire spirit leopards left not because of this elf, but because this was the territory of the elves. Moreover, from the speed at which they retreated, it was obvious that they were afraid of the elves. It was evident that the elves were overlords in this area, and normal spirit beasts dared not provoke them. Even if Qin Feng and the others had to face other spirit beasts, they didn't want to face the elves. After all, the legends about the elves were not good for humans. They reacted immediately and wanted to catch the elf. The elf's reaction was obviously half a beat slower. When she came back to her senses, Qin Feng and the other two had already attacked from 3 directions. "Ah!" the elf shouted, and the sound waves turned into ripples that spread out from her mouth. Buzz! Qin Feng and the other two were shocked. Their bodies were really trembling from the strange sound waves, but they reacted immediately. Their spiritual power exploded and connected with each other, forming a huge spiritual power energy shield that sealed the area. The elf flapped her wings and kept attacking, but she was not facing ordinary people. She was facing Qin Feng and the other two who could kill a Heaven Realm warrior by themselves. The 3 of them formed a triangle and surrounded the elf in the middle. Their spiritual power kept pressing forward, trying to catch her quickly. However, they underestimated the elf's speed. She was like a gust of wind, moving so fast that it was almost impossible to see her with the naked eye. They could only roughly determine her direction based on the trajectory of her breath. "We can't drag this out for too long," Tan Xian said with a serious expression. Qin Feng and Jing Wei nodded. This was the elf's territory. If other elves appeared, it would be troublesome. They no longer held back and used all their strength to surround the elf and begin to capture her. "Ah! Two-legged monster, don't kill me." The elf was obviously frightened. Tears gathered in her deer-like eyes, and her body trembled like an injured deer. When facing this scene, Qin Feng and the other two suddenly felt a sense of reluctance in their hearts. Weren't their actions too evil? However, they soon realized that they had been tricked. After the elf begged for mercy, she immediately flapped her wings and shot out a beam of light from her mouth. It actually pierced through the 3's defense and quickly slipped away. "Damn, she tricked us." Jing Wui's eyes widened and he gritted his teeth. He had been tricked by an elf. They quickly chased after her. When the elf broke through the encirclement, she suddenly turned her head and let out a strange sound wave from her mouth. Roar! At the critical moment, Qin Feng used the dragon's sky-shattering roar, and the dragon's roar resounded. Normal physical defense would not work on a sound wave attack. Only a sound wave attack could neutralize it. After the dragon's sky-shattering roar was used, the elf's body shook violently and her speed slowed down. Qin Feng's eyes lit up. The dragon's aura also had an effect on elves. Elves were like humans and beasts. He could not tell what race they were. However, he did not expect that the dragon's aura, which suppressed spirit beasts, would also suppress elves. This would make things easier. Qin Feng used the dragon's aura. Suddenly, the dragon's aura shone brightly and spread toward the elf. At the same time, he rushed forward and used the divine dragon technique. The dragon's roar continued. As he attacked, dragon claws and dragon tails constantly appeared with his attack. The divine dragon technique and mental strength naturally restrained spirit beasts. Now, it also had a miraculous effect on elves that were like beasts. Under Qin Feng's fierce attacks, the elf's speed strangely slowed down. Especially when Qin Feng attacked, the dragon shape appeared. Her body trembled and she instinctively felt fear. In the end, Qin Feng's mental strength crushed her and controlled her. Do it! Qin Feng shouted. Tan Xian and Jing Wui rushed up at the same time and quickly condensed their spiritual power. Chapter 343. Innocent Xiaochun. The elf's eyes were filled with fear as she begged Qin Feng and the others not to kill her. Looking at the terrified look on her face, Qin Feng's heart softened. He waved at Tan Xian and Jing Wui. Qin Feng, elves are not normal. Don't be deceived by her illusion, Jing Wui said. The power of his palm was getting more and more terrifying. We've already subdued her. There's no hurry to kill her, Qin Feng said. He then looked at the trembling elf and said in a low voice, If you're honest, we won't kill you. But if you still want to run, don't blame us. I won't run. As long as two-legged monsters don't kill me, I won't run. The elf put her hands together and promised that she would not run. Qin Feng released the suppression of his spiritual power, but he did not withdraw it completely. He sealed the elf's surroundings. Then he used the dragon god's might to warn her. The elf's delicate body trembled. She looked at Qin Feng with fear in her eyes and kept nodding. Qin Feng and the others looked at each other. Tan Xian and Jing Wui then separated and surrounded the elf. They were very close to each other. If the other party made the slightest move, they would kill her immediately. We just barged in by mistake. We don't mean any harm. Qin Feng looked at the frightened elf and tried to lower his voice. If you're willing to lead the way and let us leave this place, we promise not to hurt you. The elf's dazzling blue eyes looked at Qin Feng without blinking. After a long time, she asked, You're not two-legged monsters that the dark elves found to deal with us? Qin Feng and the others were speechless. They were handsome men with good manners. How could they be related to monsters? The other party kept calling them two-legged monsters as if they were very scary. In their eyes, elves were the scariest. The three of them looked at each other and nodded secretly. Obviously, they could tell that this elf was not very experienced and should be very easy to fool. That little girl, we are not two-legged monsters. We are all good people. Jing Wui smiled. His eyes were curved, and he looked like a wretched uncle. However, the sprite did not seem to be able to tell, and said in a serious tone, You have 2 legs, aren't you monsters? We have your statues there. The two-legged monsters look exactly like you. Jing Wui's lips twitched, and he smiled in a very friendly manner. Look at how pure my smile is and how handsome I am. How could I possibly be a monster? The elf tilted her head and carefully sized up Jing Wui. Then, she said with a serious face, But you guys look really scary. Jing Wui stopped talking and spread out his hands, indicating that he would leave it to the two of them to deal with. He was very depressed. Why were they monsters in the eyes of the elves? They even had 2 legs. This was too depressing. Was it their fault that they had 2 legs? 1 leg, 3 legs were the scarier ones, okay? After talking with the elf for a while, they were sure that this elf should be in her infancy. She was very ignorant and pure like a piece of white paper. Under their careful guidance, she gradually changed her view of two-legged monsters. Xiaochun, you have a deep misunderstanding of us. There are also good things about two-legged monsters. Qin Feng said seriously, changing the elf Xiaochun's misunderstanding of two-legged monsters. My grandfather said that two-legged monsters are very scary. They will eat elves. Xiaochun opened her big watery eyes and looked curiously at Qin Feng, then at Tan Xian and Jing Wui. Finally, she walked towards Jing Wui. Only this monster doesn't look scary, Xiaochun said to Jing Wui with a lecherous smile. Qin Feng and Tan Xian's eyes twitched. What kind of gaze was that? What kind of aesthetic sense was that? Could she not see that this was not a pure smile, but a wretched one? Ha ha! Jing Wui laughed heartily, looking very pleased with himself as he looked at Qin Feng and Tan Xian. Xiaochun, you really are adorable. You really have a discerning eye for people. You were actually the first to notice the kindest of the three of us. He pulled Xiaochun to the side and smiled amiably. Xiaochun, I'm a good person, and they're not bad people. We were forced here by real bad people, and we don't have any hostility toward this place. Can you take us through here? Were you forced here by the Dark Elves? Xiaochun asked innocently. Dark Elves? Jing Wui was startled. He did not understand, but he smiled and said, in short, we have no hostility towards you or your tribe. If there is anything you need help with, we will be happy to help. Really? Xiaochun was delighted. Can you help us fight the Dark Elves? Jing Wui's face froze. He really wanted to slap his own mouth. What nonsense was he talking about? Haha, what are those Dark Elves? They are very bad elves. They killed many of our good elves, Xiaochun said, clenching her little fists. She was very angry. Jing Wui laughed awkwardly and looked at Qin Feng and Tan Xian. The two of them crossed their arms and looked like they were watching a good show. Didn't you like to trick little Lolas and beauties? Continue. Seeing this, Jing Wui's mouth twitched. Suddenly, he saw a big explosion and immediately said, Xiaochun, look, that little sister likes you a lot. I like this little sister too. Xiaochun was very naive and was immediately distracted by Jing Wui. Little sister. Xiaochun walked towards Big Explosion. Obviously, she liked little Lolas like Big Explosion. Don't touch me. Who is a little sister? Big Explosion was unhappy and pushed Xiaochun away, not wanting her to come close. This little girl is very naive. Jing Wui walked over and the smile on his face disappeared. He looked at Xiaochun, who was quickly playing with Big Explosion, and his expression became serious. Maybe we can use her to pass through the territory of the elves. Qin Feng nodded slightly. He stopped them because of this plan. But she said that the Dark Elves are troublesome. It should be that the elves are also divided into factions. Tan Xian nodded and said, let's hope we can pass through here safely and not have any conflicts with them. Xiaochun was too naive, so she trusted people easily. They didn't think that other elves were so easy to get along with. As for the internal disputes of the elves, they didn't want to get involved. Soon, Xiaochun completely trusted them and treated them as good two-legged monsters. Of course, this was partly due to Jing Wui's obvious and covert tactics. They were lucky to have met an ignorant elf. They could use her to pass through the territory of the elves, as long as they didn't come into contact with any dark elves. However, sometimes things didn't go as planned. Before they left this place, there was a sharp sound of something breaking through the air. In the mountain forest, figures flashing with black light shot out from the ground. At the same time, a murderous aura spread out. Chapter 344. Light and dark. Sensing the strength of the aura, Qin Feng and the other two's complexion changed abruptly. They had encountered dark elves. 6 or 7 figures appeared, 5 men and 2 women. All of them had pointed ears and a pair of wings on their back. Their wings were the opposite of Xiaochun's. They were transparent with a hint of dark color, giving off a baleful aura. Obviously, these were the dark elves Xiaochun had mentioned. Qin Feng and the other two sighed inwardly. They had just encountered the light elves, and before they could do anything, they had run into dark elves. Their luck was really bad. Haha, it's actually Princess Xiaochun. It seems that even the heavens want to exterminate the light elves, haha. Seeing Xiaochun, the leader immediately laughed proudly. Qin Feng's heart sank. He could hear the strong killing intent in the other party's laughter. I'm afraid this won't be easy to pass, Tan Xian said in a low voice. These dark elves were obviously experienced. They couldn't be persuaded with just a few words. This is a two-legged monster? Suddenly, Ming Sen saw Qin Feng and the others. He was immediately startled, and then revealed a look of disbelief. Previously, he had thought they were just ordinary elves, but after careful observation, he discovered that they were actually two-legged monsters. What two-legged monster? I'm your grandpa! Jing Wui cursed angrily. They were upright and upright people. How could they be monsters in the eyes of the elves? If they didn't add 2 feet, then they were 2 feet. It was too coy and unpleasant to hear. Ming Sen's eyes turned cold, flickering with bewilderment. He didn't make a move for a while. Obviously, he was afraid of two-legged monsters. Su Xiaochun, you are a light elf. How could you collude with lowly two-legged monsters? You've really lost the face of our elven race. Ming Sen shouted. Hiding behind Jing Wui, Su Xiaochun looked at the angry Ming Sen in fear. Obviously, she was very afraid of him. Jing Wui's eyes gradually turned cold. He, Qin Feng, and Tan Xian looked at each other and nodded slowly. Leave this guy to me. The two of you take care of the others. He secretly transmitted his voice to Qin Feng and the other two. The 3 of them moved stealthily. In the next moment, they dashed towards Ming Sen's group. Qin Feng immediately used the Divine Dragon technique and used the dragon might to suppress the bloodline of Ming Senator then. His spiritual power surged out from his mind, but it was not to attack Ming Sen and the others, but to block their escape route. They had seen the speed of the elves. If they wanted to run, they would never be able to catch up. Now that the dark elves knew that humans had entered this place, if they were allowed to leave this place alive, it would not take long for this matter to spread throughout the elf tribe. And from their tone, it was obvious that they were hostile to humans, so they absolutely could not let any of them leave alive. At first, Ming Sen was disdainful of Qin Feng's group of 3. But soon, his expression changed. The 6 people behind him began to tremble as they felt the pressure of this bloodline. Let's go, these two-legged monsters are not simple. Ming Sen shouted and quickly retreated. However, they ran fast and retreated even faster. They didn't know when, but they were surrounded by spiritual weapons. They naturally couldn't see these spiritual weapons, but they could feel the cold energy in the air. Moreover, this energy was very harmful to them. Whoosh! At the moment when Ming Sen was shocked, Jing Wui appeared in front of him with deicide and fiercely slashed it down. Ming Sen's eyes turned fierce. He pulled out his long sword and met the attack from below. With a bang, sparks flew everywhere. Ming Sen was immediately sent flying and smashed into the ground. You just entered the heaven realm. I don't know how many people like you I have killed. Jing Wui coldly snorted. Su Xiaochun saw that Jing Wui was so powerful that he defeated the dark elf Ming Sen, who was much stronger than her, in just one move. Her eyes suddenly sparkled, and she happily shouted, Brother E, you can do it! Ha ha! Xiaochun, watch how your brother E tortures this idiot. Jing Wui looked up and laughed. When he lowered his head, his smile was immediately replaced by coldness. He swooped down and approached Ming Senator Qin Feng's body flashed and disappeared. The other elves were shocked. How can he be so fast? Their faces were filled with horror. In the forest, they had a unique advantage, and that was absolute speed. Even the fire spirit leopard could not catch up with them. But this two-legged monster's speed was too terrifying. They could not even see a trace of its movement. In fact, this was not speed. Qin Feng used his spiritual power to hide his body. Bang! An elf was sent flying, his chest caved in, and he died instantly. Whoosh! The spear flashed, and another elf died. Under Qin Feng and Tan Xian's quick attacks, the remaining 6 elves were not spared. They were quickly killed. Boom! There was a loud bang, and Ming Sen's body was sent flying. Blood spurted from his mouth, and his body fell quickly. But just as he was about to come into close contact with the ground, his body suddenly twisted, and the black wings on his back flapped. Then, he shot into the distance. Bang! However, he did not fly far before he was blasted back by a punch. Ming Sen's eyes were filled with confusion. There was no one around, so how did he suffer such a heavy blow? He did not have time to think about this because the tip of a spear pierced through his throat. What a joke! He had just entered the small heaven realm, and under the joint efforts of Qin Feng, Tan Xian, and Jing Wui, it was already good enough for him to last one round. In fact, this group of elves was not weak, and it was very difficult to kill them all. It was just that they were very unlucky. They had encountered Qin Feng, who specialized in restraining them, so they could not use their speed advantage. After dealing with this group of elves, Qin Feng burned their bodies to ashes with the fire god technique, and then quickly left this place. Just now was a lesson. In this kind of place where danger lurked everywhere, there was no time to be careless. Along the way, the little stars in Shu Xiaochun's eyes did not disappear. She looked at Qin Feng and the other two with admiration. In her opinion, they were definitely great masters who could deal with a group of powerful dark elves in such a short time. Even in her tribe, they were all superior elves. "Why are you so powerful?" Shu Xiaochun asked. Big brother, he still has more powerful means to use. To deal with that idiot just now, I only used less than 30% of my strength, Jing Wui said proudly. Wow, big brother you are so powerful. Qin Feng and Jing Wui rolled their eyes. Even Big Explosion was speechless. Probably only the silly Shu Xiaochun could seriously cooperate with your performance. By the way, aren't the Dark Elves the same race as you? Jing Wui did not hesitate to ask the key question. Chapter 345. Ouyang Qingqing, the Dark Elves wanted to unify the Elf Clan and restore the Elf Clan to its former glory. Since then, the Light Elves and the Dark Elves often fought each other. During this period, the Dark Elves were very active and often invaded our territory. There were many wars, and it was said that they even found two-legged monsters to help them. That's why I thought you were the Dark Elves' helpers. Hearing this, Qin Feng and the others roughly understood the current situation of the Elf Clan. This was not a bad thing for them. The Elf Clan was not on good terms with each other, and when there were wars, they did not have much energy to pay attention to other things. That elf called you Princess Xiaochun just now. It seems that your position in the Light Elf Clan is not low. Qin Feng asked. Hearing this, Su Xiaochun immediately puffed up her chest and said proudly, I am the direct descendant of the Mother of Elves. The reason why the Dark Elves have not succeeded is because of our bloodline. We are the Orthodox Elves, so many elves are willing to join us. Seeing her proud look, Qin Feng and the other two secretly shook their heads. This elf was really stupid. With this kind of identity, as long as an elf had a little brain, they would try their best to hide it in front of outsiders, but she wanted everyone to know. It's not easy to live until now. Jing Wui shook his head and sighed. Big brother are you saying that I'm very powerful? Su Xiaochun widened her eyes and asked seriously. Of course, my Xiaochun is the most powerful, Jing Wui said against his conscience. It seems that my decision was right. Su Xiaochun pursed her lips proudly. I said that as long as I make a move, I will definitely do great things. Those old fellows in the clan did not believe me. Fortunately, I sneaked out. When I go back, I will definitely show off to them. If it wasn't for us, would you still be alive? Jing Wui secretly shook his head. Under Su Xiaochun's lead, they continued to go deeper into the 100,000 barren mountains. Wait, something is wrong. There is an unfamiliar aura. Suddenly, Su Xiaochun stopped and showed a puzzled look. What's wrong? Jing Wui asked. Big brother something's not right nearby. There's an aura that's very similar to yours. Su Xiaochun's tone was filled with confusion. As soon as these words came out, Qin Feng and the other two's eyes reflected a cold light at the same time. They had the same aura as them. Could it be that the people from the imperial capital had chased them all the way here? But that shouldn't be the case. They were already in the depths of the 100,000 barren mountains. How could others possibly enter this place? Xiaochun, are you sure you sensed wrong? Impossible. Shu Xiaochun shook her head and said, This aura is very similar to yours. At that time, I felt your aura and was curious, so I went to take a look. We elves, especially those with the purest bloodline, are naturally close to nature. Here, as long as it's not too far away, as long as it's an unfamiliar aura, I can sense it. Qin Feng and the other two's expressions changed. Since Shu Xiaochun was so certain, it was obvious that a stranger had also come here. Moreover, it was very likely that he was an expert from the imperial capital. I know. It must be a two-legged monster that the dark elves found. Shu Xiaochun suddenly shouted and revealed a look of resentment. They are too despicable. They actually joined forces with a two-legged monster. The battle between the light and dark elves is an internal struggle. They actually joined forces with outsiders to suppress their own people. Can you find the source of that unfamiliar aura? Qin Feng asked coldly. Shu Xiaochun nodded and suddenly said in surprise, "That aura is quickly approaching us." Hearing this, Qin Feng and the other two quickly became alert. Over there. Shu Xiaochun pointed in a direction. Whoosh. At this moment, a sharp attack shot over. Qin Feng suddenly stretched out his hand and opened his spirit power hand. He caught the attack and then slowly crushed it. He was startled. This kind of attack wasn't very strong. This shouldn't be. If the imperial capital really sent people to hunt them down, they would definitely be at the late stage of the small heaven realm, or even the ninth heaven realm. However, this aura was only at the middle stage of the spirit detecting realm. This didn't make sense. With a whoosh, Qin Feng's eyes narrowed. It's you. A figure slowly walked out of the forest with a long sword in her hand. She stared at Qin Feng with hatred in her eyes. You shouldn't have chased me. Qin Feng withdrew his hand and said indifferently, Go. I don't want to kill you. But I will kill you. Ouyang Qingqing stared at Qin Feng angrily and said, You killed the little prince and harmed my sister. I swore that if I don't kill you in this life, I, Ouyang Qingqing, will never see my sister again. Hearing this, Qin Feng sighed and asked, How did you get here? It has something to do with the dark elves, right? Ouyang Qingqing waved her long sword and rushed toward Qin Feng without saying anything. Seeing the look of resolution on Ouyang Qingqing's face, Qin Feng paused for a moment. He waved his hand and sent Ouyang Qingqing flying. He coldly said, This is the last time. If there is a next time, you can go down and accompany the little prince. After saying this, he ignored her and left. Go, continue to follow me. Even if Qin Feng doesn't kill you, I will. Jing Wui coldly glanced at Ouyang Qingqing. Qin Feng, I will not let you go unless you kill me. Ouyang Qingqing bit her red lips and stared angrily at Qin Feng, who was leaving. After leaving, Qin Feng's mood was very low. However, he did not regret it. As long as he could take revenge on the prince and the imperial capital, even if it was only for a short period of time, he did not care. He was not a saint. Why would he care about harming the innocent when taking revenge? Moreover, it was related to the imperial family. In his eyes, there was no innocence. Ouyang Qingqing was not wrong, and he was not wrong to take revenge. What was wrong was that they were on opposing side. Tan Xian patted Qin Feng's shoulder and nodded at him. Qin Feng smiled. Don't worry, I understand. Suddenly, the sound of battle came from afar. Shu Xiaochun's delicate face changed. Our people are fighting with the dark elves. Big Brother Yi, let's go quickly. Qin Feng and the other three did not move. Shu Xiaochun looked at them and asked, Big Brother Yi, what happened? Jing Wui smiled and said, Xiaochun Wei. Okay, Big Brother Yi will help you beat them away. Okay, thank you, Big Brother Yi. Shu Xiaochun nodded happily and led the way. Jing Wui, she is very similar to my sister. Jing Wui walked in front. After a moment of silence, he said, I wasn't there when the assassin organization was in trouble. When I went back, I only saw my sister lying in a pool of blood. She didn't even say goodbye to me. This is the biggest regret in my life. I can't forgive myself in this life." Qin Feng and Tan Xian sighed. They had experienced this kind of pain before. "Let's do it quickly, lest we attract more dark elves." Qin Feng took out the sky-splitting axe and Tan Xian held the sky-slaughtering spear. "You!" Jing Wui looked at the two of them. "There is no need to say this between us." Tan Xian shook the sky-slaughtering spear in his hand and quickly shot it out. Chapter 346. The Imperial Capital's envoy looking at the two departing figures, Jing Wui had a smile on his face while his eyes were slightly moist. In the forest, light and darkness erupted. In the sky and on the ground there were flashing figures everywhere. Every time they clashed, there would be a huge burst of spirit power. Swish, swish, swish. Suddenly, 3 light beams rushed out and immediately killed 3 powerful dark elves. Then, the 3 light beams continued to burst out. Everywhere they passed by, there would be a mess as figures were sent flying while vomiting blood. The light elves and dark elves were startled by the sudden appearance of the 3 figures. "This is the two-legged monster?" The elves on both sides exclaimed at the same time, but their expressions were completely different. The light elves were shocked, surprised, and even a little fearful. On the other hand, the dark elves were furious, doubtful, and unwilling. "What are you doing? Don't forget our agreement." A powerful dark elf roared. They had promised to help the dark elves unify the elven race. That was why they allowed the dark elves to enter and even greeted the spirit beasts in the outside world. Otherwise, how could they come here? But now they actually made a move on their own side. Such despicable acts of going back on their words made him furious. At the same time, he was also doubtful. Since when did the dark elves make contact with those people, and even instigate them to defect? Ignoring that dark elf's roar, Qin Feng and the other two killed their way. Every time they made a move, a dark elf would fall. In a short period of time, the dark elves suffered significant losses. Bastard! The powerful dark elf was about to dive down and get rid of the 3 traitors, but he was quickly stopped by a powerful light elf. "Tuoba-yi, you are too despicable. You actually colluded with the two-legged monster and broke the elven race's rules. If the mother of the elves knew about this, she would not be at peace." The dark elf Xingqi spoke furiously. Tuoba-yi had been frowning since Qin Feng and the other two made a move. He hesitated for a long time before deciding to block Xingqi. The other party might be a two-legged monster, but they had saved many light elves. Regardless of the reason, Tuoba-yi couldn't allow the dark elves to kill them on the battlefield. At the very least, he had to ask the reason. The light elves didn't have any contact with the outside world. How could they collude with the two-legged monster? He heard that the dark elves colluded with outsiders. "Uncle Tuoba, they are my friends. They are here to help us." Su Xiaochun ran over under the protection of the big flower explosion and shouted to Tuoba-yi. "The dark elves have already colluded with the two-legged monster. They are already approaching here." "Princess?" After seeing Su Xiaochun, Tuoba-yi turned pale with fright. How could he still care about what Su Xiaochun said? He immediately rushed over to protect Su Xiaochun. But this time, it was Xing Qiong who stopped him. He looked down at Su Xiaochun and shouted, "Dark elf warriors, listen up! Capture Su Xiaochun at all costs." Furthermore, there was only a little girl beside her. Any dark elf who was not weak would be able to catch her easily. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, immediately, rays of dark light swooped down, and many figures appeared on the ground. Many dark elves had shaken off their opponents and were rushing over. Obviously, Su Xiaochun's status was higher than what Qin Feng and the others had imagined. At least, the dark elves dared to capture her at all costs. After Jing Wui killed an opponent, he immediately turned around and rushed towards Su Xiaochun. However, it was too late. It wasn't difficult for them to kill dark elves, but in terms of speed, they were too slow. Be it light elves or dark elves, they were all very fast. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been in such a sorry state when they caught Su Xiaochun. The big flower explosion stood in front of Su Xiaochun and clenched her small fists tightly. She said to Su Xiaochun, "Little girl, follow behind me." Her eyes turned dark green, and scales appeared on her arms. The big flower explosion punched out with both fists, and the space in front of her distorted. The air exploded, and the few dark elves who were at the front immediately vomited blood and were forced to retreat. Some of them had their innards crushed by the powerful force. The other dark elves were shocked, but they had plenty of battle experience and knew that this little girl was very strong. Therefore, they instantly spread out and surrounded her. This was very difficult for the big flower explosion. She didn't have much battle experience, so she could only fight them face to face. If she fought them, she would only become a live target. Qin Feng also rushed back, and spiritual weapons were constantly shot towards them. However, there were many dark elves who were interfering with him, and some of them were at the heaven realm. Even if he could suppress them, it would take some time to break through. Because the dark elves didn't know the big flower explosion's background, they circled around and continuously shot out energy beams. Facing so many attacks, the big flower explosion panicked and kept retreating. Some dark elves seized the opportunity, and their eyes flashed. Then, they suddenly swooped down and grabbed at Su Xiaochun. Roar! Suddenly, there was a sharp roar, and a huge tail covered in dark green scales swung over. It immediately sent those dark elves flying, and their bodies exploded in the air. It was obvious how powerful the tail was. "What monster!" the rest of the dark elves exclaimed. Looking at the dark green monster lying on the ground with 4 limbs, their eyes were filled with deep fear. This was a fear that came from the depths of their hearts, and they couldn't suppress it. "Everyone, follow me. As long as we catch Su Xiaochun, the light elves will be finished, and it will only be a matter of time before we, the dark elves, unify the elf clan." A dark elf with a strong cultivation shouted to the other dark elves, "Surround that monster." These dark elves were well trained. Even if they were afraid, they quickly surrounded the big flower explosion, relying on their speed to deal with it. As for the dark elf, he directly rushed towards the frightened Su Xiaochun, and a black light condensed in his palm. However, just as he was about to grab Su Xiaochun, she suddenly disappeared. The dark elf was stunned. Before he could react, he felt a sharp force coming towards him, and he quickly put his hands in front of his chest. Bang! A dull sound was heard, and the dark elf was forced back. As he retreated, he reached out with his hand, and a black light burst out. The void trembled, and Qin Feng's figure flashed out. He held Su Xiaochun and rolled out. At the critical moment, he finally arrived. He used his spiritual power to envelop Su Xiaochun. The dark elf's eyes narrowed, and then he flapped his black wings, turned into a black light, and chased after Qin Feng. "Go away!" Qin Feng roared, mixed with the sky-shattering dragon roar, which made the dark elf's body tremble. Then, his spiritual power turned into a big hand, and slapped towards the dark elf. The dark elf quickly dodged, and felt that this power was difficult to deal with, so he didn't take it head-on. Qin Feng held Su Xiaochun and quickly retreated, but before he could breathe a sigh of relief, his pupils suddenly shrank. Almost instinctively, he twisted his body, and then a sharp pain came from his shoulder. A long sword pierced through his left shoulder, and blood immediately flowed out. He suddenly waved his hand behind him, and spiritual power burst out. At the same time, he also attacked with his spiritual power. He quickly leaned forward, turned around, and stared coldly at the person who attacked him. Chapter 347. Guardian of Light. Qin Feng stared at the youth with a gloomy expression, his heart throbbing. If he hadn't instinctively dodged just now, the other party's sword would have pierced his head. Hong. At that moment, a shocking explosion of energy came from the distance. The mutated big flower was sent flying, her body tumbling in the air as she spat out blood. Qin Feng's expression changed greatly. To be able to injure the big flower in this state, the attacker must be a 9th stage Heaven Realm master. Sure enough, a figure slowly appeared. Then, he continued to rush towards the big flower. Qin Feng was just about to rush over when Ouyang blocked his path and asked, "Where's my sister?" "She sneak attacked me, but I didn't kill her." Qin Feng pointed in a direction and said, "If you rush over now, you might still be able to make it." Ouyang frowned and narrowed his eyes, looking at Qin Feng, wanting to know the meaning of his words. Qin Feng stared at him indifferently, his spirit and mental force surging at the same time as he said coldly, "I have no great enmity with your family. You'd better not stop me." Saying so, a red light flickered between his eyebrows and the immortal reincarnation eye slowly opened. As it opened, a violent energy spread out. Feeling the terror of Qin Feng's attack, Ouyang was also shocked. His eyes flickered for a moment and he shot towards the direction Qin Feng pointed at. After getting rid of Ouyang, Qin Feng carried Su Xiaochun towards the direction of the big flower. Between his eyebrows, the immortal reincarnation eye gently opened and a shocking violent energy slowly spread out. The master attacking the big flower suddenly felt a chill in his heart and turned his head, only to see a red light erupting from Qin Feng's forehead. In an instant, all the hair on his body stood on end and he quickly dodged. The red light shot through a dark elf in the distance and shot out from behind him, directly collapsing a mountain in the distance. Qin Feng felt regret. Although the immortal light was powerful, it was still too difficult for a 9th stage Heaven Realm master to use. Die! All of a sudden, that person closed in on Qin Feng with a whoosh and struck out with a palm. Qin Feng's pupils constricted, and a sharp pain came from all over his body. He was directly hit by a palm filled with terrifying fluctuations of spiritual power. He turned around with all his might, channeling all his mental and spiritual energy to his back. Bang! Qin Feng's spiritual power was dispersed, and his spiritual power was shattered. The palm slammed into his back and his body shook. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body shot down like a meteor, diving toward the ground. "You!" Su Xiaochun was shocked. She stared blankly at Qin Feng. She didn't understand why he would do this. Clearly, he could have just thrown her out and resolved the crisis, but in order to protect her, he chose to take the hit. Whoosh! Suddenly, an extremely terrifying palm, carrying a dense golden light, chopped down towards Qin Feng's head. "Xianyuan Owl is here too." Qin Feng was shocked, but after taking the hit of the 9th Heaven Realm, he was severely injured. Moreover, he was in a state of emptiness, so he couldn't gather his strength to dodge. Moreover, Xianyuan Owl was aiming for this opportunity to kill him. He wouldn't give him the slightest chance of survival. "How can I be willing to die here?" Qin Feng murmured in his heart. He had escaped the pursuit of the imperial capital several times, broken through the Heaven Mountain Pass, and finally entered the 100,000 barren mountains. How could he be willing to die here? Bang! Xianyuan Owl's sharp hand chopped down, but Qin Feng didn't feel his head shattering. He couldn't help but open his eyes, only to see Su Xiaochun spitting out blood and her face pale. Obviously, she had blocked Xianyuan Owl's fatal blow. Su Xiaochun's blood spilled on Qin Feng's face, making him look ferocious. "You're courting death!" Qin Feng roared. Taking advantage of this gap, he didn't care about his injured body and desperately mobilized his spiritual energy to attack Xianyuan Owl. But at this moment, his attack obviously didn't pose any threat to Xianyuan Owl. He easily dodged it and once again shot towards Qin Feng. Boom! At the critical moment, the blade and spear swept over at the same time. Tan Xian and Jing Wui appeared in time to resolve Xianyuan Owl's second fatal blow. Even the imperial family is here. It seems that in order to hunt us down, you're really willing to do anything, Tan Xian coldly said. Obviously, Xianyuan Owl's group was able to come here because of the Dark Elves. Aren't you also on the side of the Light Elves? Xianyuan Owl's expression was indifferent. No matter where we go, it seems that we are born to be enemies. Jing Wui looked at Shu Xiaochun, who was almost unconscious. The wings on her back were broken and drooped on her body. She looked very miserable. Qin Feng, are you all right? Jing Wui asked. Qin Feng waved his hand weakly and stabilized his body. Seeing this, Jing Wui nodded slightly and turned his head. His face suddenly surged with coldness, and his eyes were filled with an extremely cold, killing intent. Attack! Tan Xian and Jing Wui attacked Xianyuan at the same time. Humph! 2 against 1? Our imperial family is not without people. Suddenly, a figure blocked Tan Xian's path. Golden light surged around his body, releasing terrifying fluctuations. Xianyuan Xiantian, Tan Xian said in a low voice with a dignified expression. Xianyuan Xiantian was the youngest son of one of the imperial capital's older brothers. He was very powerful. Before the Tan family was massacred, the imperial capital's elder brother had sparred with him before. So many years had passed. Although they had not met again, Tan Xian knew that Xianyuan Xiantian must be extremely powerful. Xianyuan Xuantian's talent was not inferior to Tan Xian's. Coupled with the imperial family's background, Xianyuan Xiantian would not be weaker than those princes. Seeing Tan Xian and Jing Wui being stopped, Qin Feng's heart sank. He didn't know how many experts had come from the imperial capital. In his current state, any minor Heaven Realm expert could easily kill him. Whoosh! Whoosh! Qin Feng was already there, but he quickly relaxed. These were all light spirits, and they had come to protect Shu Xiaochun. In the distance, a sharp voice sounded out as ripples spread out, sending many dark elves flying. Following this, a figure descended. Thank you. A handsome young man walked over in the air and nodded to Qin Feng. His attitude was rather amiable. Obviously, he saw that it was Qin Feng who had saved Shu Xiaochun at the critical moment. When his gaze fell on Shu Xiaochun, the gentleness in his eyes was replaced by jealousy and coldness. Shu Xiaochun struggled to open her eyes. When she saw the young man, her big eyes immediately became misty and tears flowed down. Elder brother! The young man walked over and took Shu Xiaochun from Qin Feng's arms. He scolded, "Now you know the danger of fooling around." Although his tone was filled with dissatisfaction and blame, the pain and nervousness in his eyes were even more intense. "Light guards!" the young man shouted. Suddenly, a dazzling light burst out in the sky. Following this, a group of people suddenly appeared. There were not many of them, only 30 to 40 of them. However, each of them was very powerful, especially their overall aura. Even 9th layer Heaven Realm experts were slightly shaken. Chapter 348. The Power of Wood. Suddenly, a group of new forces joined the fray. Although there weren't many of them, their combat power was astonishing. Without a 9th Heaven Realm expert, no amount of Dark Elves or Imperial Capital experts could stop them. Damn it! The Nightwalker looked at the Guardians of Light with a gloomy expression. After a long time, he waved his hand. Retreat! The Guardians of Light were the elf race's most powerful guards. Only the purest elves could mobilize them. It was also because of this group of guards that they had no choice but to go out to find the two-legged monster and join forces with it. Xing Qiu looked at the Guardian of the Vision, and his eyes were clouded. In the past battles, the Dark Elves had lost many powerful experts. They hated the Guardian of the Vision to the core. Fortunately, this was only a portion of the Guardians of Light. Otherwise, they wouldn't even have the chance to retreat. As the dark elves retreated, the area gradually quieted down. Qin Feng and the others searched for the whereabouts of Xianyuan Owl and the other Imperial Capital experts, but they had also disappeared. They should have regrouped with the dark elves. Qin Feng rushed to Big Popcorn's side and picked her up. His brows were filled with heartache. The latter's entire body was covered in red, and most of the exposed skin was red, as if a layer of skin had fallen off. "Uncle, it hurts." Exploding Flower lay in Qin Feng's arms and mumbled with a pained expression on her face. Qin Feng's heart trembled. He secretly contacted the Demon Eye and asked him to save Exploding Flower. Exploding Flower's mutation last time was more severe, but she was quickly healed by the Demon Eye. This time, Qin Feng could only ask the Demon Eye for help. "I can't save her," the Demon Eye replied. "How is that possible? Last time, it was because my power had been freed from your body. Naturally, I had many methods, but I can't use them now." The Demon Eye said, "Don't worry, this little girl won't die. She'll just be in pain for a while." Qin Feng sighed in his heart before a smile appeared on his pale face. "It won't hurt any longer. When we return, I'll roast a pheasant for you." As he spoke, he used his last bit of spiritual energy to refine some healing herbs into liquid and smeared it on Big Flower's body to relieve his pain. After doing all this, he couldn't hold on any longer. He raised his head and jumped down. After all, he had suffered a blow from a 9th-stage Heaven Realm Master and was severely injured. If not for the situation being so dangerous, he would have already fainted. Now that he was safe, the injuries in his body suddenly erupted, and he could no longer remain calm. When he woke up, he was in a room. No, to be precise, it was a wooden room. It didn't look like a room, but more like a wooden cave. There were vines hanging all around. If one were to sense it carefully, they would be able to sense an endless life force. Qin Feng was a little surprised. This seemed to be somewhat similar to the power of wood. Along with the emergence of the Water God technique, the Fire God technique, and the Gold God technique, Qin Feng also chatted a lot with Mo Yen about the 5 Elements technique. He knew about the miraculous 5 Elements technique. The power of wood contained an endless amount of vitality and was extremely beneficial for healing injuries. Qin Feng could vaguely sense a strange life force here. He even vaguely sensed that there were wisps of air gathering towards his body. As these air currents entered his body, he dared to sense that the pain in his body was slightly alleviated. Could this be the power of wood? Qin Feng's heart trembled. He didn't cultivate the fruit wood divine art, but during the trial of the true blood inheritance, he had fought against the young form of an ancestor. That ancestor also possessed the power of wood. Hence, he had come into contact with it before and had some understanding of it. Although this power was very weak and couldn't be completely sensed, it was slightly similar to the power emitted by the Wood God's secret art. Not bad. There should be another secret art of the 5 Elements technique here, the Wood God's secret art. The Demon Eye's voice sounded in his mind. Qin Feng was shocked. He licked his dry tongue and a fiery light surged in his eyes. Only now did he understand why he didn't feel weak when he woke up. It was because of the power of wood. "Old demon, can you sense where it is?" Qin Feng asked, a little anxious. He coveted the royal family's Gold God secret art, but he couldn't obtain it because the two were at odds with each other. If he could obtain the Wood God's secret art here, it would definitely increase his strength by a lot. The fairy clan doesn't seem to know about the existence of the Wood God's secret art. The Demon Eye's voice was a little doubtful. But there is indeed the presence of the power of wood here. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be. No one has used the Wood God's secret art, so how could there be such fluctuations? And this area is covered by the power of wood. Boy, you have to check this place carefully. If there isn't an extremely powerful expert using the Wood God's secret art, this place isn't simple. Qin Feng nodded, paused for a moment and asked, "Could it be a powerful existence of the elf clan?" "It shouldn't be. When I saw the light and dark elves fighting before, no one used the wood god's secret art." The demon eye slowly shook his head. "And the power of wood is always there. You should know that if you don't use it, the power of the 5 elements can't be sensed by others. If there really is a powerful existence of the elf clan using the wood god's secret art, first of all, this art is extremely suitable for healing, and it's impossible that it hasn't been passed down. Second, no one can use the wood god's secret art indefinitely, so this possibility can be ruled out." After listening to the demon eye's words, Qin Feng nodded secretly. Indeed, if he didn't use the power of water and fire, no one could sense it. In this way, it was impossible for the elf clan to have the wood god's secret art. That's why I said that this place isn't simple. The power of wood is endless and seems to have merged with this place. Qin Feng was about to continue asking when someone suddenly came in. He quickly pretended to be asleep. Vaguely, he sensed that someone had come in. There were about 3 or 4 of them, and their auras weren't weak. They faintly locked onto him with hostility. "He hasn't woken up yet?" someone asked, puzzled. With his strength, he was injured by a 9th-level Heaven Realm expert. Even if this tree hole has healing properties, he shouldn't wake up so quickly, another person said. The dark elves colluded with the 2-legged monsters. "We have to be careful. I think we can try to do the same." "How can you be so muddle-headed? Have you forgotten the teachings of our ancestors? The 2-legged monsters are extremely vicious and should never come into contact with them. But they saved Princess Xiaochun. This is also a fact. Moreover, the dark elves colluded with the 2-legged monsters. Their strength must have increased greatly. Let's talk about this later. The Light Spirit Lord will think about it. The Light Spirit Lord has already locked up the 2-legged monsters. I'm afraid the Light Spirit Lord has his own thoughts. It's not something you or I can guess. Moreover, they did save Princess Xiaochun. The Light Spirit Lord probably won't kill them, but he will definitely investigate this matter thoroughly." After that, the 2 of them chatted for a while before leaving. Chapter 349. Night Exploration of the Elf Territory. Qin Feng did not expect that the elves, who were terrifying, mysterious, and untouchable existences in the eyes of humans, were also the same in the eyes of the elves. He also did not expect that after risking their lives to save Shu Xiaochun, the elves would still treat them like this. He narrowed his eyes as he lay on the wooden bed. His eyes flickered as he thought about something. From their conversation, Qin Feng learned that Tan Xian and the others had been locked up. If he had not been seriously injured and unconscious, he would have suffered the same fate. His previous thoughts of contacting the elves had changed. If he was also locked up, it would be troublesome. If the elves wanted to kill them, there would be no one left to save them. But at this moment, he was seriously injured. If he wanted to fully recover, it would be impossible for him to leave without at least 3 to 5 days. And during this time, he could not just pretend to be unconscious. Qin Feng was anxious. He had encountered a big problem. He could neither leave nor stay. "Old Mo, what should we do now?" Qin Feng asked in his mind. He did not know the elves' attitude towards them, nor did he dare to gamble. Leaving was the best option, but with his injuries, it was inconvenient for him to move. "Perhaps we can use the endless life force of the wood energy here to heal." The demon eye paused for a moment before continuing. "You cultivate the 5 elements arts, so you have the power of fire and water, especially the power of water. Water is wood, so perhaps you can use more of the wood energy here." Hearing this, Qin Feng was surprised. "Is that possible?" "In theory, it is possible." Qin Feng nodded. Without hesitation, he used the water god technique. Streams of water energy seeped out from the air as he carefully sensed it. The power of wood was also a type of the 5 elements art. They belonged to the same branch, so he should be able to sense that power. Qin Feng lay on the wooden bed with his eyes closed. The power of water around him surged, constantly expanding and contracting in the room. It approached the endless life force and then merged with it. He also opened his senses to the maximum. He opened up his body and mind, allowing his senses, body, and mind to merge into the environment, trying to comprehend the mysterious power of wood. He had never cultivated the divine wood formula before, so this would be very difficult. Time ticked by. Qin Feng's face was covered with sweat, and the veins on his head were squirming. Obviously, his progress was not good. It is indeed somewhat difficult, but this method is feasible. It only requires you to have absolute comprehension and understanding of the power of the 5 elements. The demonic I said in a timely manner, don't force it too much. The power of the 5 elements is the power of nature. If you force it too much, it will often backfire. When the conditions are right, success will follow naturally. Hearing this, Qin Feng calmed down and stopped trying to capture that qi. Half an hour passed, but Qin Feng didn't gain anything. However, his heart was as still as water, and there wasn't the slightest fluctuation in his state of mind. Time flowed through his fingers like sand. When it was late at night, Qin Feng suddenly opened his eyes. There was some relief in his eyes. I've finally found it. He lightly smiled and formed the seal of the 5 elements art. The power of water and the power of fire appeared at the same time. Immediately after, a cool breeze suddenly blew in the room. After that, strands of cyan-colored air current that could be seen with the naked eye suddenly appeared and gathered towards Qin Feng's body. As the green qi entered his body, Qin Feng could clearly feel that his injuries were recovering at a very impressive speed. In less than 2 hours, his injuries were completely healed, and he had reached his peak. Not only that, but there was also a green qi flowing around his body, and a vigorous vitality spread out. Draw the power of wood into the jade pendant, the demonic I said. The power of wood can save my sister and Gong Xiaoxi. Qin Feng was stunned, and then his heart burned. It's hard to say. The demonic I paused for a moment, then said, but the power of wood has a vigorous and endless vitality. It will definitely be of great benefit to the 2 of them. Hearing this, Qin Feng hurriedly poured the green qi into the jade pendant. At first, there was no reaction, but gradually, he sensed a weak fluctuation of life coming from the jade pendant. Qin Feng was delighted. This was Gong Xiaoxi's fluctuation of life. And as more and more green qi entered the jade pendant, Gong Xiaoxi's fluctuation of life gradually became stronger. However, his joy did not last long. When Gong Xiaoxi's fluctuation of life reached a certain level, the green qi would no longer have any effect. What's going on? Qin Feng frowned and asked. Right now, you can only use the 5 elements to draw the power of wood. You don't know the real wood god spell, so naturally, you can't draw the real power of wood. The demonic I said, this is not the real power of wood. Its effect is naturally effective. Hearing this, Qin Feng nodded. He calmed his heart and sensed the fluctuation in the jade pendant. Gong Xiaoxi's had stabilized, and the wisp of life had strengthened a lot. However, Qin Yao's didn't improve much. Your sister was killed by a 9th-level Heaven Realm expert. Her situation is different from Gong Xiaoxi's. This thin power of wood won't have much effect on her. The demonic I seemed to know what Qin Feng was thinking and said so. Qin Feng was silent for a while before suddenly asking, if I master the wood god spell, can I save them? No. Why? Qin Feng asked. The power of wood has rich vitality, but it doesn't mean that it can bring back the dead. Your sister and Gong Xiaoxi only left behind a part of their life aura and a little true knowledge. I used my great magic to not completely kill them, But no matter what, in a sense, they are considered dead. If you want to truly bring them back to life, you will need a heaven-defying treasure. After pausing for a while, the demonic eye continued, however, although the power of wood can't bring them back to life, if you nourish them with the power of wood for a long time, when their life ore reaches a critical value, you might be able to awaken their mental strength. At that time, you can communicate with them mentally. This can also be considered a kind of resurrection. Qin Feng's heart moved slightly. He was even more determined to obtain the wood god spell. Now that he had recovered to his peak state, he could move freely. He used his mental strength to hide himself and sneaked out. This was a vast forest. Every tree was unimaginably thick. The smallest one was the size of an ordinary house. Some were even more than 100 meters in diameter, standing here like a small mountain. Every giant tree had a wooden hole in its trunk. It was similar to the one he lived in before. He guessed that this should be the house where the elf clan lived. The elves liked the dark, so there was no light at night. However, their hearing was extremely sensitive. They could detect even the slightest movement. Therefore, Qin Feng couldn't make any noise. Chapter 350. Ninth Layer Heaven Realm Puppet. The elf tribe's terrain was quite large. Qin Feng searched for more than an hour and still couldn't find where Tan Xian, Jing Wui, and the big flower explosion were. He carefully walked through the forest without making a sound. Gradually, he felt that he had entered an important place of the elf race because he found that there were more and more hidden sentries nearby. There were even places where there was a light elf hiding in a tree a dozen meters away. It was enough to see that this was definitely not an ordinary place. Fortunately, spiritual force naturally restrained spirit beasts. The elf race was like a human, but not a human, and also like a beast, so they were also suppressed. He wrapped his spiritual force around himself, which was the best way to hide. Generally, he wouldn't be discovered. Even if he was face to face with them, as long as he didn't make a sound, the other party might not be able to discover him. Of course, the premise was that he couldn't be too powerful. Qin Feng walked all the way through here. In the end, even a ninth-layer Heaven Realm super powerhouse appeared. Of course, he wasn't standing guard, but lived here. Qin Feng carefully passed through this super powerhouse's residence and entered the depths of the forest. He was slightly puzzled. Was this an important place of the elf race? Why was it that the more he looked at the desolate moon, the more he saw that there were no more hidden sentries here? The ground was barren, not even a blade of grass grew. Some places were dry and cracked. However, not far away, there were jagged rocks of grotesque shape. There were many grotesquely shaped rocks standing there. Some were ordinary rocks, some were spirit beasts, some were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, and some were human-shaped rocks. There were mountains on both sides, and many of them were bare. The more he walked, the more Qin Feng felt that something was wrong. There wasn't even the slightest bit of life here. In such a large forest, let alone elves, there wasn't even a single spirit beast. Damn, what is this place? Qin Feng felt his hair stand on end. There was definitely a problem. But just as he was about to leave, the demon eye's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Boy, this place isn't simple. It should be the core of the elf race. It should be related to the release of wood energy in the elf race's territory. Qin Feng was startled. He had randomly searched around and actually barged into the core of the elf race. He quickly asked, "Old devil, can you sense the divine wood spell? There should be a divine wood art here. However, the terrain here is very special. Look at the stone forest in front of you. That's a formation that causes you to get lost. Even if ordinary people were to barge in, they would get lost within it." The demonic eye spoke with a hint of pride in his voice. "But it's lucky for you, brat." Qin Feng was overjoyed. It was clear that the elves valued this place very much. Although they didn't know about the divine wood spell, they definitely had other treasures. Originally, Qin Feng felt that he had let them down by obtaining the divine wood art from them. But now that they had treated them like this, Qin Feng didn't feel any guilt. He took everything he could and took it all away. Old devil, let's go. Under the guidance of the demonic eye, Qin Feng quickly passed through the stone forest formation and entered the land behind it. On this piece of land, there was nothing but a stone statue in the middle. Qin Feng approached the stone statue. This stone statue was very tall, at least 100 meters tall. The carvings were vivid and lifelike, giving off an indescribable pressure. Danger! The demonic eye's voice suddenly rang out. Even without its warning, Qin Feng had already sensed it. The heavenly water field suddenly opened, and then a black shadow smashed into the water like a meteor. However, with the resistance of the water, the shadow was much slower. During this time, Qin Feng retreated rapidly. Whoosh! Another strong wind blew, and the black shadow rushed over. Qin Feng's pupils contracted. The power of fire exploded, turning into a ring of flames that enveloped the black shadow. Boom! The third black shadow appeared. Qin Feng only felt his body tremble, and waves of piercing pain came from his skin. His mental power quickly circled around the spiritual coffin, and then rushed toward the black shadow. Bang! 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 The heavenly water field, the ring of flames, and the mental power's three defenses were all broken in an instant. The three black shadows quickly attacked at extreme speed. This was the pure power of the physical body. 3 consecutive sonic booms could be heard. They were too fast and too powerful. Although there was no spiritual power circulating, just the physical strength alone was comparable to a 9th-stage heaven realm powerhouse. Chi. At the critical moment, the demonic eye made its move. A large amount of black mist rose, blocking the 3 black shadows' attacks. Qin Feng quickly retreated. After being attacked by the demon eye, the speed of the 3 black figures slowed down. Finally, they uniformly stopped in the distance. This is... Qin Feng was shocked. Although he couldn't see their faces, his mental power could sense that these 3 people, no, to be precise, were not people, but 3 dried corpses. Their bodies were shriveled, as if they were just skin and bones. Their eye sockets were sunken, and their cheekbones were protruding. Obviously, they were not living people, but dried corpses that had suddenly come back to life. There's no vitality. They should be puppets. No wonder, the demonic eye said. Qin Feng nodded deeply. The strength of these 3 puppets had reached the 9th-stage heaven realm. Because they had no consciousness, he could only dodge their old-fashioned attacks. Otherwise, if a real 9th-stage heaven realm powerhouse suddenly attacked him, no matter how strong he was or how fast he reacted, he would be killed. There was no way he could dodge. "Leave it to me," the demonic eye said, about to make its move. Puppets of this level were too far away for Qin Feng. There was no way he could resist. Under the night sky, the darkness surged, turning into a large black hand that reached for the 3 puppets. Qin Feng retreated far away. This was the first time he saw Mo Yin fight without his body. He was very curious about how strong the demonic eye was now. But soon, he was shocked. Under the attack of the black mist, the 3 puppets had no power to resist. This old guy is so strong? Qin Feng was happy about the demonic eye's strength, but he was also deeply worried. After all, he and the demonic eye were enemies. The demonic eye was helping him in order to occupy his body in the future. The demonic eye was very strong. This was very helpful to him, but it would also bring him great difficulties. In the future, there would be a great battle between them for the sake of their bodies. Qin Feng shook his head and threw away this worry. Now was not the time to think about this. Soon, the demonic eye dealt with the 3 puppets. What surprised Qin Feng was that one of the puppets was not dealt with and still had power. While Qin Feng was puzzled, the demon eye slipped into his palm like a wisp of smoke. "Old demon, you dealt with this one?" Qin Feng had a strange look. Why did he feel that the puppet still had a lot of power? My strength has reached the limit. I'll leave the rest to you, the demonic I said, then said, don't worry. I've weakened more than half of this puppet's power. At most, it's a little stronger than the late stage of the heaven realm. Well, it's barely half a step into the 9th stage. Moreover, you don't have any opponents in the heaven realm. You can use this puppet to measure the limits of your strength. Chapter 351. Monopolizing the puppet. The corner of Qin Feng's mouth twitched. What kind of test is this? Tempering? If you don't have any strength, who would believe you? Coincidentally, after weakening it to the half-step 9th stage heavenly stage, your strength will reach its limit. However, despite his anger, Yang Kai accepted it calmly. Just as the demon I had said, an ordinary small heaven stage late stage master was no longer a threat to him. Moreover, he wanted to see how big the gap was between him and a 9th stage heavenly stage master. Taking a step forward, Yang Kai's fighting spirit surged. In front of him, the puppet stood upright. It wore an old-looking black armor. The armor was covered with black patterns, giving off a strange and cold feeling. Qin Feng stared at the lifeless puppet, a strong sense of danger surging in his heart. Immediately, the spirit energy in his body and the mental force in his mind quietly circulated. Gotcha! While Qin Feng was carefully examining the puppet, a gotcha sound suddenly rang out from under the puppet's black armor. It was as if something had been activated. Then, Qin Feng saw a pair of scarlet light shoot out from the pair of sunken eyes, causing his skin to turn cold. The puppet condensed the scarlet radiance on Qin Feng's body. After which, black runes slowly rippled out from the armor as a frightening spiritual energy pressure was emitted out. Damn, how can there be spirit energy? Old demon, are you playing with me? Qin Feng yelled angrily. Heh heh, I accidentally injected a little. The demon I chuckled. Qin Feng was so depressed that he wanted to die. Isn't this playing with me? Old demon. I won't let you do this. Since you already know, I won't hide it from you. It was indeed my doing, because I felt that the puppet's combat strength would be greatly reduced if it didn't have any skills or thoughts. If a half-step 9th stage heavenly stage puppet really fought, a small heaven stage late stage master should be able to face it, but a 9th stage heavenly stage puppet is too weak. I can't make it too low, but I can't make it too high either. I might as well add some spiritual energy in between. The demon I smiled treacherously. Kid, I haven't seen you fight anyone since I woke up. I want to know where your limits are and how much you've grown over the years. Qin Feng's eyelids twitched as he said, even if I'm lucky enough to agree, I'm afraid I'll still suffer heavy injuries. At that time, when the time comes, you can use the divine wood formula to heal yourself. The demonic I continued, I can sense the pure power of wood here. The divine wood art must be nearby. This is a great opportunity. Don't you think it's too cheap for you to get it without paying anything? Firstly, I want to test you. Secondly, I want to tell you that any kind of power comes with hard work. Of course, luck is also involved, but I hope that you will never rely on luck, because you will never know when luck will not take care of you. Once, just once, you may even have to pay with your life. Qin Feng was silent for a while. It did not take him much effort to come to the elf clan's important place. The 3 puppets were sold by Mo Yen, and he seemed to be very relaxed without paying anything. Although the demonic eye did this to torture him, what it said was not wrong. People can have luck, but they can't rely on it. Qin Feng calmed his mind and looked at the puppet clad in old armor, feeling that it was quite troublesome. Although he wanted to test his own combat strength, when facing a master who had 1 foot in the 9th stage heaven realm, the pressure he felt was great. After all, the other party had 1 foot in the realm. While Qin Feng's heart was surging, a black light had already started to surge out from the puppet's black armor. A frightening spiritual energy fluctuation was swiftly condensing. Clang. That puppet did not stop at all. Its large feet suddenly stomped, and its body transformed into a black ray of light that appeared in front of Qin Feng in a ghost-like manner. After which, it threw a punch straight towards Qin Feng. Boom! As he punched out, the berserk black spiritual energy gushed out like an enraged python. Even the air was forcefully blown apart by the gale created by the punch. Qin Feng's face slightly changed. He did not expect that the puppet's speed would not be any weaker than before after it gained spiritual energy. At this moment it was too late to retreat, so he could only use offense as a defense. He also punched out with his spiritual energy and spiritual energy. Boom! However, it was directly scattered the moment it came into contact with the strong and ferocious fist wind. After which, the remaining fist wind swept across Qin Feng's crossed arms in front of him. Qin Feng's body was instantly sent flying, and the blood in his body violently surged. His arms were stinging with pain, and he only stopped after flying dozens of meters. Qin Feng stabilized his body, but his heart was trembling. Damn it, this puppet is too powerful. In the past, when he was at the middle stage of the spirit detecting realm, he dared to fight against someone at the late stage of the small heaven realm. Now that he had reached the late stage, he was no longer afraid of experts at this stage. However, after exchanging blows with this puppet, he knew that there was a big gap between the late stage of the small heaven realm and the half-step ninth heaven realm. Boom! Not far away, the puppet did not give Qin Feng any chance to catch his breath. It took a step that caused the earth to tremble and rushed over again, its attacks sweeping out like a gust of wind. Seeing this, Qin Feng's expression turned bitter. He could only grit his teeth and continue to retreat. Bang! Qin Feng's retreating figure was once again swept by the puppet's violent fist wind. The air exploded, and his feet slid across the ground, leaving a long trail. A trace of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Qin Feng's heart trembled. All of his attacks were as weak as paper in front of this puppet. The gap was too big. The puppet attacked again, and Qin Feng could only choose to retreat. He used the body-changing steps to skillfully avoid its attack, then used his mental force to turn it into a sharp weapon and swept out. The puppet turned around and punched out. Along with the fierce spirit energy gushing out, all of the mental force weapons were shattered, and the aftermath attacked Qin Feng. Hand of Yang. Hand of Yin. Qin Feng used his yin-yang technique to dissolve the puppet's attack. Then, with the divine dragon body, he leaped high and turned half a circle. Borrowing the force of the rotation, he viciously swung his leg at the puppet's head. Pung! Facing Qin Feng's attack, the puppet still used a fist. In the collision, spirit energy shot out and raged, and Qin Feng was suddenly sent flying. Roar! Qin Feng roared and used the divine dragon sky collapsing roar, but the effect was even worse. The opponent was not alive, and the sound wave attack had no effect at all. A black shadow flashed, and a fist mixed with terrifying spirit energy fluctuations blasted over. Qin Feng could not avoid it, and could only meet it head-on. He used the tyrant dragon claw and punched out, accompanied by a dragon claw. Boom! Chapter 352. Obliterate. Qin Feng's expression became more and more dignified. This puppet was too powerful. Even if he used all of his methods, the difference in strength was too great. Old devil, your test is too difficult. I'm not even on the same level as it. Qin Feng quickly retreated to avoid the puppet's attack. He called out to the demon eye in his mind, "Hurry up and remove its spirit energy. This guy has spirit energy and can already display part of the power of a ninth-stage heaven realm master." Although the old devil had suppressed the puppet's power to the half-step ninth-stage heaven realm, it was still a master in this realm, and its body had already adapted to this power. Now, with the addition of spirit energy, it could already display part of the ninth stage Heaven Realm's power. Although the difference between the ninth stage Heaven Realm and the half-step ninth stage Heaven Realm was only half a step, the gap between them was like a heavenly chasm that was difficult to cross. This kind of power had already surpassed his current limit. You still have the strength to speak, which means you haven't been forced into a desperate situation, the demon I said indifferently. Qin Feng's face twitched. He really wanted to pull it out and give it a good beating. What exactly is its weakness? Qin Feng frowned. He definitely shouldn't face the enemy head-on. Just as he was thinking, the puppet attacked again. It didn't give him any time to think at all. Strong spiritual energy swept over like a black storm. Qin Feng's expression suddenly changed. The power of fire and water surged out at the same time. Walala! Walala! Water and fire burst out, one from the left and one from the right, fiercely slamming towards the puppet. Rumble! Suddenly, a dull sound rang out and a large amount of white fog appeared, drowning the area. Using the fog to blur the other party's vision, Qin Feng quickly retreated a distance and stared into the distance. Using the water god's secret art and fire god's secret art at the same time was not weak. After all, with his current strength, he had already displayed these two powers to the extreme. Even a minor Heaven Realm master would have to temporarily avoid them. Qin Feng nervously watched the white smoke rising. At a certain moment, his pupils shrank and he instinctively moved half a meter. Whoosh! At the place where he was standing before, a withered claw that seemed to be flickering with a cold light grabbed towards him. The claw's 5 fingers suddenly clenched, and at the center of the claw's palm, the air was violently distorted, and then exploded. The sound of a sonic boom resounded. Qin Feng's expression changed. His powers of water and fire had almost no effect on it. It's just a walking corpse without any thoughts or feelings of pain. Your attacks are effective against normal living beings, but they don't have much effect on this kind of puppet. If you want to defeat him, you have to use the most violent power, said the demon eye. Can we only face it head-on? Qin Feng whispered, his eyes flickering with hesitation. Don't think too highly of it. The reason you think it's very powerful and you can't deal with it is because in your subconscious, you already think it's a powerhouse in the ninth stage Heaven Realm, and you're not its opponent. You've given yourself a very good reason for your failure. You think it's nothing to lose to this kind of puppet because the gap between you and it is too big. Once you have a reason for your failure and find a way out for yourself, you won't be able to fight with your back against the wall and use all your strength. Kid, don't think it's that strong. In fact, it's only slightly stronger than a minor Heaven Realm expert. If you can't see through this, then don't even think about the divine wood art, let alone saving Gong Xiaoxi and your sister. The demon eye's tone was somewhat stern. At the end, he slowly said, in fact, the current you is not weak. Hearing this, Qin Feng fell silent. He didn't know whether the demon eye was right or not, but he did feel that this puppet was not something he could deal with. Therefore, during the battle, he focused on dodging and didn't really use all his strength. Damn, I'll believe you this time. Qin Feng no longer dodged. The spiritual energy around his body surged, setting off a gust of wind. His spiritual energy also spread out from his mind, condensing into a yin-yang fusion array. As it stretched and contracted, space quietly distorted. Let's fight! Qin Feng roared and attacked the puppet for the first time. When he rushed towards the puppet, the Sky Devourer finger shot out, turning into a sharp beam of light. Bang! The only response the puppet received was a fist filled with ferocious spiritual energy, which shattered the finger light. Whoosh! Qin Feng appeared in front of the puppet like a ghost and threw out a punch. Black and white spiritual energy vibrated out, entangling with each other and rushing forward. Boom! After a fierce collision, Qin Feng's body trembled and then flew back. The soles of his feet scraped the ground for more than 10 meters before he stopped. He looked at the puppet with joy in his heart. The corrosive power of the yin-yang technique had an effect on it. Waves of sizzling sounds came from the fist, and the sandbag-sized fist shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. When it shrank to half its original size, the corrosive power was also consumed. Boom! Just as the puppet was about to move, suddenly, a gust of wind blew. The yin-yang fusion array fell from the sky, and spiritual energy surged like a vast ocean, smashing over. Terrifying spiritual attacks struck the puppet's body, causing it to tremble and stumble backward. "It's not over yet." A cold smile appeared on Qin Feng's face. In the center of his brows, a vertical eye that glowed with a scarlet light slowly opened. In an instant, a violent aura gushed forth. Chi! A red light shot out from his eye. In front of the red light, the space was constantly distorted. The air frantically escaped, leaving a shallow red mark in the air. An extremely violent force spread out in this area. Roar! That puppet actually let out a low roar, as if it sensed danger from Qin Feng's attack. It roared in anger as black spirit energy surged out from its body. It was like a vast ocean as it furiously slammed over. The red light shot into the sea of spiritual energy with a whoosh, immediately rolling up monstrous waves, accompanied by the scarlet light. Pung! The red light directly penetrated the sea of spiritual energy and pierced through the puppet's arm. In an instant, the arm exploded. "There's more!" Qin Feng shouted, and the immortal reincarnation eye blinked violently. Light gathered, and another immortal light shot out. The puppet quickly dodged, and its figure rose from the ground, but it was still a step too late. The immortal light pierced through its right leg, and immediately after, the right leg exploded. Qin Feng looked at this scene with great regret. Once the immortal light was released, it was almost invincible. Even masters who had just entered the 9th stage heaven realm had to be careful when dealing with it. The attack power of this move was terrifying, but it was also because of this that it was difficult to accurately lock onto the opponent when using this move. This also led to the fact that when facing half-step 9th stage heaven realm masters or even stronger masters, it would be difficult to effectively deal with them. This puppet had been distracted by Yang Kai's several feints, and after using the immortal light twice in a row, it still hadn't been killed and had only lost one of its legs and one of its arms. If it had been an ordinary minor heaven realm master, under such a crazy series of attacks, they would have already died, but this puppet had only lost one of its arms. Moreover, this was in a situation where the other party didn't have any consciousness. It was obvious how strong a half-step 9th stage heaven realm master was. It definitely wouldn't be easy for Yang Kai to deal with it. However, the battle had almost ended at this point. Losing a leg and an arm greatly reduced its attack power and speed. It no longer posed any threat to Yang Kai. Chapter 353. Mother of the Fairies. After successfully killing this puppet, Qin Feng's heart was filled with gratification and gratitude. If it wasn't for the demon eye waking him up, he might still be in a sorry state under the attack of this puppet. Remember, never fear the strong, and never underestimate yourself. The demon eye said. Qin Feng nodded solemnly. The demon eye was right. He couldn't be timid just because the opponent was strong. Right? You just said that you felt the rich power of wood here. Do you know where the divine wood art is? Qin Feng quickly asked. It should be related to this statue. The demon eye was silent for a while, then said, "This statue is a bit unusual. The weak power of wood of the fairies is emitted from this stone statue." Hearing this, Qin Feng was shocked. A stone statue could actually emit the pure power of wood. This meant that the divine wood art was on this stone statue. He looked at the stone statue. It was very old, and the color of the stone was very dark. He didn't know if it was because of the erosion of time, or if it was originally like this, but it gave a very heavy feeling. This was a female statue. Even if the edges were worn and the traces of time were very heavy, he could still vaguely tell that this was a very beautiful woman, and she was very young. So young. Qin Feng was puzzled. To carve such a stone statue in the fairy race's important place, the owner of the stone statue must be an extremely important fairy, or an fairy who had made great contributions. But she looked very young. Qin Feng felt that it was a bit strange. This should be the mother of the fairies that the little fairy spoke of. The demon, I said, then sighed. It seems that this mother of the fairies was also an extraordinary person when she was alive. The power of wood can endlessly spread out from here, enveloping the entire fairy race. This method is somewhat extraordinary. Qin Feng nodded. To be able to make the demon, I admit that this person was extraordinary. She must have been a peerless figure in the past. But now wasn't the time to sigh. He quickly asked, "Where is the divine wood art?" The demon, I was silent for a while, then suddenly said, "Boy, this time you might be drawing water with a sieve." Hearing this, Qin Feng was shocked. "Old devil, what do you mean?" Earlier, I was guessing that it was most likely due to the special terrain of this place that caused the power of wood to spread. Now, it seems that it was done by someone. It should be this mother of elves doing. The demonic eye sighed and said, "If it were other strong cultivators, it would be easy. However, with my current strength, I am unable to obtain the divine wood art." Qin Feng's face darkened. "I've risked my life to do so much, and you're telling me it's all for naught? That can't be helped. You don't know how powerful the mother of fairies is. The means of such a character can only be undone when she is at her peak," the demon, I said. Qin Feng's expression was gloomy, his eyes were filled with unwillingness. The divine wood art was right in front of him, but he couldn't obtain it. How could he accept this? However, since demonic I had already said so, what else could he do? He could only admit that he was unlucky. But it's not like there's no chance at all. Suddenly, demonic I spoke again. "If it's someone else, there should be no way at all. However, if it's you, there may be a glimmer of hope." Qin Feng's eyes lit up when he heard this. He quickly asked, "What do you need me to do?" This time, demonic I fell silent and didn't respond. Qin Feng was anxious. "Old demon, say something. Even if the hope is small, I'm willing to try." This was his only chance to help Gong Xiaoxi and Qin Yao. Qin Feng really didn't want to give up. Once he left the 100,000 barren mountains and entered the outside world, he was afraid that he would have to say goodbye to the divine wood art. At that time, he didn't know when he would be able to revive Qin Yao and Gong Xiaoxi. Therefore, even if it was dangerous this time, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, he had to give it a try. Demonic I was silent for a long time before he said in a low voice, "Boy, do you know the origin of the primitive land?" Qin Feng was startled. Immediately, his face darkened and he nodded. "You know?" Demonic Eye's voice was a little surprised. "A very long time ago, a tribe was slaughtered by the experts of this world. Only a few old, weak, sick, and disabled people were left behind. They kept these people in captivity and diluted their pure blood. In the end, they released them to this continent." Qin Feng said softly, "You know everything?" Demonic Eye's voice was hesitant and trembling. "While you were asleep, I received some inheritance from my ancestors." Then, Qin Feng told Demonic Eye about his experience in the Dark Tower. Of course, he kept a lot of things to himself. He only mentioned some of the things that had been passed down for a long time. After a long silence, Demonic Eye sighed. "I didn't expect you to have awakened the pure blood in your body and become a true pureblood. This way, you may have a better chance of obtaining the divine wood art. In that era, the elven race was a subsidiary race of your bloodline. In the end, a great war broke out. Although the elven race wanted to save you, they were powerless. In the end, the mother of the elves led her race away from the land of calamity and lived in seclusion. From then on, the elven race disappeared from the world. These elves should be the descendants of that race. The mother of the elves is very likely to be that supreme existence. She was indebted to one of your ancestors. She did not pass down the divine wood art. Instead, she used a special method to seal it here. Most likely, she wanted to return it to its rightful owner. Demonic, I said. Qin Feng was startled. Return it to its rightful owner? That's right. Demonic, I nodded. The 5 elements art was originally invented by your ancestor. Because the divine wood art is more suitable for the elves who are close to nature, it was passed down to them. The 5 elements art was invented by my ancestor. Qin Feng's eyes widened. He suddenly said, Then why didn't you tell me when you obtained the water god art? What's the point of telling you? You haven't even opened your pureblood. What's the point of knowing? Demonic, I said. There are some things that are not good for you if you know too much in advance. But since you know part of the truth, there's no need to hide this from you. This mother of the elves is also a person of character. Although your tribe has declined, she didn't take the divine wood art for herself. Instead, she left it for the descendants of that tribe to come and receive the inheritance of the divine wood art. Kid, although this is returning it to its rightful owner, you must remember the kindness of the other party. You will have to repay it in the future, Demonic, I said. Qin Feng pondered for a moment. Then, he nodded. Based on the mother of the elves' great act of guarding the divine wood art for so many years and not taking it for herself, he didn't have much dislike for the elves. After all, they were once close to his ancestor. Old demon, are you sure you're telling the truth? What I mean is, this divine wood art was left to us by the mother of the elves. Qin Feng asked. She didn't pass it down to the descendants of the elves. There should be no mistake. Black mist surged in Qin Feng's palm. Then, Demonic, I sighed. Chapter 354. Inheritance of the Wood God Formula. As the demonic eye's voice disappeared in his heart, Qin Feng's spirit shook, and then he appeared in a green world. He was not shocked. After experiencing so many things, his heart was as calm as still water. He felt the extremely rich power of wood in this world, and his heart trembled. The power of wood was so rich that he did not know how many times stronger it was than his power of water and fire. He thought that he had mastered these 2 god formulas, but compared to the power of wood here, it was undoubtedly the difference between a firefly and the moon. This was not a green world, but a small world formed when the power of wood reached a certain level. Here, he just stood and did not do anything. The injuries caused by the battle with the puppets were instantly healed. Unfortunately, he could not mobilize the power of wood here, and could not inject it into the jade pendant. Are you a pure-blooded? A voice suddenly sounded in this world. The voice was very pleasant, like the heavenly music of the 9 heavens, and it tugged at one's heartstrings. Qin Feng was shocked. He looked around but found nothing. He quickly replied, I am a pure-blooded. Which bloodline do you belong to? The voice sounded again. Qin Feng was in a difficult position. He did not know which bloodline there was. He only knew that the tribe back then was a pure-blooded one, but there were several leaders in that tribe, and their bloodlines were different. For example, Tan Xian and Jing Wui were also pure-blooded, but they received different inheritances. Obviously, they were all pure-blooded, but there were also different bloodlines. As for which bloodline he belonged to, he did not know. He said, Senior, I only activated the pure-blooded bloodline in the inheritance of my ancestor. I do not know about the matters of my ancestor's era. The world of wood was silent. After a long time, a green light shot over. Qin Feng did not dodge and let the green light shoot into his body. In an instant, Qin Feng felt that he had nowhere to hide. All of his secrets were exposed here. In an instant, or perhaps a long time, the green light left his body. Then he heard the voice again, but this time it seemed to be trembling. Great desolate battle body, limitless. You're actually a descendant of limitless. Soon after, the world distorted in a certain direction, and the power of wood that filled the sky gathered. Finally, a slender woman appeared. Her face could not be seen, but a mass of green light enveloped her body. I can't believe. I managed to wait for his descendant. The woman seemed to be very emotional. Even her voice was slightly trembling. How many years has it been? This bloodline has been envied by the heavens and cursed. I thought that his descendants had all been killed. I didn't expect that there were still descendants left. Infinity, do you see that? I've been waiting for your descendant. In the end, your lineage hasn't disappeared. Qin Feng listened quietly and did not interrupt the woman's recollection. However, there was a strange look in his eyes. When the Mother of Fairies mentioned Lord Infinity, no matter how he listened to it, he felt that something was wrong. It was as if there was an unusual relationship between them. After a long time, the woman gradually calmed down and said to Qin Feng, but her tone was much gentler. Little guy, you're here for the divine wood formula, right? There aren't any elves outside. It seems that you have some tricks up your sleeve. Qin Feng was embarrassed. To be honest, although he wanted the divine wood formula, he could swear that he really only wanted to find out where Tan Xian and the others were imprisoned. He came here in a daze. Of course, he did not deny it, because he really did covet the divine wood formula. No matter how powerful his descendant is, it's only natural, the woman said. With a wave of her arm, a green light flickered and an image appeared. It was a dark starry sky. It was ruined, accompanied by blood and bones. Even though it was just an image, Qin Feng could feel the bitter taste of the starry sky. Suddenly, a strong light bloomed in the image, causing his heart to tremble. Because it was the light of chaos, it made him understand that one of his direct ancestors was fighting with someone. That figure flickered with the light of chaos and suppressed the 9 heavens. He was like a god of chaos with an invincible battle prowess. Even the starry sky was trembling as he stood there, dim and devoid of light. He was fighting with someone and was injured. Because he had many opponents, all of them at the same level as him, he was fighting against several powerful people at the same level as him. A bitter battle erupted. In the end, Qin Feng saw that his great desolate battle physique had been beaten to a pulp. Blood and bones were scattered, and the cold wind was bleak. You can't kill my bloodline, and the heavens can't destroy it. He spoke, and his eyes surged with high battle intent. Even though he was about to wither, he still erupted with peerless power. In the end, a terrifying explosion erupted in the depths of the starry sky. One could see stars exploding one after another, and the starry sky collapsed. That kind of destructive power was almost unimaginable for humans. At the end of the image, Qin Feng saw that in an unknown broken starry sky, a broken corpse accompanied by a broken ancient cauldron traveled alone into the distance, disappearing into the boundless starry sky. When the image disappeared, Qin Feng's eyes were already filled with tears. His heart was extremely uncomfortable, and he really wanted to roar and vent it out. That was his direct ancestor, boundlessly glorious and illuminating the starry sky, but in the end, he was so sad and lonely with only half of the ancient cauldron as his companion. Senior, is that ancestor Wuji? As his descendant, you should be proud of him. The woman sighed softly. Back then, your tribe was wiped out in a short period of time. It wasn't because of battle, but because those people were too despicable. They tricked away many experts and launched a sneak attack. Otherwise, who in the world would be able to wipe out that tribe? Now that his descendant has come, it's time for the divine wood art to return to its rightful owner. After the woman finished speaking, the boundless power of wood in the world converged on Qin Feng's body. Qin Feng hurriedly sat down cross-legged and formed the seals of the 5 elements art, using this to comprehend the divine wood art. He had already cultivated 2 types of divine arts, so he was naturally more proficient in this. In less than half an hour, Qin Feng opened his eyes. In his eyes, a green light circled around for tens of seconds before slowly dissipating. Qin Feng stood up and clasped his fists at the woman. He respectfully said, "Thank you, Senior, for helping me. Don't forget the shame of your bloodline. The blood and tears of your ancestor need to be wiped dry." The woman waved her hand, not wanting to say anything more. Qin Feng hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Senior, what's your situation now? Can I help?" "The only thing you can help me with is to let Wuji smile in the underworld. Don't disgrace our bloodline." "Don't worry, Senior." Qin Feng nodded solemnly. After a moment of silence, he said, "Senior, there is a great enmity between the elf race and the human race. A few of my friends have been captured by them, and I am also under their surveillance." Before Qin Feng finished speaking, a green token appeared in his hand. "If they still respect and abide by the rules, they should know what to do. Let's go." Chapter 355. Face-to-face. Qin Feng looked at the green token with mysterious patterns on it. For a moment, his heart was in turmoil. He had witnessed the desolation of his ancestor, and his heart was filled with a bitter taste. The joy of obtaining the divine wood art was also diluted by this sadness and anger. "You know a bit, demon," I said. Qin Feng nodded slightly. After a moment of silence, he suddenly asked, "Old devil, how are you so familiar with the matters of that era? How long have you lived?" His palm was silent. After a long time, Qin Feng shook his head and smiled. He stopped asking and asked, "Do you think those executioners are still alive?" "I'm talking about the ultimate culprits who exterminated my tribe." Qin Feng knew that that era was extremely far away from the present. Most people couldn't have lived until now. However, he wasn't sure about those people who looked down on the heavens. Normally, no one can live that long. Demon, I paused for a moment, then suddenly said, "However, they slaughtered your ancestor. Perhaps there will be a turn for the better." Qin Feng was stunned. "What do you mean? Your tribe was very powerful back then, especially the top experts. They transcended the suppression of the heavens and lived for a long time. Some people speculated that your tribe might have something related to longevity. That's why the people of your tribe usually live longer than others. They slaughtered the entire tribe. If they really found the method of longevity, they might be able to survive." Hearing this, Qin Feng's heart surged with boundless anger and killing intent. He hoped that some of those people were still alive. That way, he would have a chance to avenge his ancestor. But if that was the case, then they were only able to survive because of it. That kind of humiliation and resentment was too difficult to bear. Killing them and then using their method to live for countless years. Who could accept that? Keep a calm heart. The current you can't even reveal your identity as a pure-blooded, let alone take revenge. Remember, only by living can you create a legend. If you die, you'll only become a skeleton forgotten by people." Qin Feng nodded. He naturally understood this principle. He calmed himself down and respectfully bowed 3 times to the stone statue before leaving. "I wonder if this green token will be effective," Qin Feng thought to himself. He decided to confront the elves directly. He had no idea where Tan Xian and the others were locked up. Moreover, they should already know that he had left by now. He had no time to slowly search for and rescue them. Only a face-to-face contact could save Tan Xian and the other 2. When the sky began to brighten, Qin Feng left this place. Not long after he entered the forest, a powerful aura descended. It was the 9th-level Heaven Realm fairy guarding this place. It was a middle-aged man, and his eyes were filled with anger and shock. "How dare you trespass into the ancestral land?" Qin Feng looked at him coldly and said, "I want to see your clan leader." "Humph, Do you think the clan leader is someone you can meet just because you want to? Two-legged freak, follow me to your death. The middle-aged man coldly snorted as killing intent flashed in his eyes. A gigantic hand grabbed towards Qin Feng. Qin Feng slowly stretched out his right hand and suddenly opened his 5 fingers. A black light burst out and pierced through the large hand. You? What kind of power is this? The middle-aged man looked at the bloody hole in his palm, then looked up and angrily looked at Qin Feng. I said, I want to see your leader. He walked forward, and wisps of black gas spread out from his palm. He said, I don't want to kill you, so don't provoke me anymore. The middle-aged man was shocked. He felt an extremely terrifying power from Qin Feng. I don't want to be your enemy, so please don't be aggressive. The middle-aged man looked at Qin Feng, and his expression became indifferent again. He didn't continue to attack, and he brought Qin Feng to the Elven clan's meeting hall. Elder Han, you caught this two-legged monster. Soon, a group of elves walked over, their eyes filled with cold light. Han Guang's face was gloomy, but he didn't say anything and continued to walk forward. Humph, the dark elves are colluding with the two-legged monsters. This person and those 3 must be their accomplices. Let's kill these two-legged monsters. Some of the more radical elves surrounded Qin Feng, wanting to attack him. What are you doing? Back off! Han Guang angrily shouted, and these elves were stunned. Elder Han, this is a two-legged monster, an extremely vicious bandit. Why do you want to keep him alive? A group of elves said with dissatisfaction, but they didn't dare to attack. What do you know? Lord Clan Leader has his own reasons. Han Guang gloomily looked at these elves and shouted, Go do what you're supposed to do. Stop fooling around here. He wasn't worried about what the elves would do to Qin Feng, but he was worried that these elves would anger Qin Feng. Even he wasn't a match for this guy. If he really got angry, these elves would all die. Soon, they entered the meeting hall. This was a huge tree hole. From the outside, it looked ordinary, but once inside, one would find that there was a universe inside. The interior was very spacious, and the decorations were splendid. There were tables, chairs, cups, ornaments, everything was available, and it was almost similar to a human's. There were already many elves in the meeting hall, and they were all very powerful. Obviously, they had already heard the news. One by one, they looked at Qin Feng, and their gazes were very unfriendly. Qin Feng could even feel some killing intent surging in here. Some of the powerful elves didn't even bother to hide their killing intent. Qin Feng sighed in his heart. The elves used to be a subsidiary race of his tribe. What happened later that caused them to hate humans so much? Above the main hall of the meeting hall, there was a middle-aged man sitting there, and there was a powerful aura between his eyebrows. Even if it was just a casual glance at Qin Feng, it made his heart palpitate slightly. How terrifying! Qin Feng was shocked. He had to admit that this elf was terrifyingly powerful. In his opinion, this person was probably even stronger than the dean of the St. Ryuan. This must be the chief of the Light Elf tribe. Greetings. Qin Feng cupped his fists and spoke in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Shu Chongkong looked at Qin Feng, and there was a hint of astonishment and admiration in his eyes. Your boldness is quite extraordinary. Are you not afraid at all? Qin Feng smiled. I'm inside the Light Elf tribe. If the chief wants to kill me, what use is there for me to be afraid? Chief, the two-legged monsters can't be left alive. Our ancestors have passed down a rule that we elves are not allowed to come into contact with the two-legged monsters. If we do, we must kill them. An old elf said as he glanced at Qin Feng unkindly. I also agree with Elder Su's suggestion. The rules of our ancestors cannot be broken. The dark elves colluded with the two-legged monsters and are no longer worthy of being called elves. We, the Light Elves, are the orthodox race. Even if we are destroyed in the end, we will fight to the death as elves. Another old elf spoke out, supporting Elder Su. Shu Chongkong had a smile on his face as he looked at the others and asked, "Everyone else, do you have any other objections?" The elves were silent. After a moment, an old elf with one foot in the coffin with a cane spoke out. "The light elf tribe and the two-legged monsters cannot coexist. They broke into our territory, and according to our ancestors' rules, they should be killed. However, they did save Xiaochun." Chapter 356. Elven Death Warrant. As Su Xiaochun walked in, the few radical old elves in the hall looked at each other and shook their heads, not saying a word. Su Xiaochun looked at those people and then looked at Shu Chongkong. She said seriously, "Father, without him, I would have died a long time ago. You all said that the two-legged monsters were extremely vicious, but they never hurt me. We elves are particular about repaying kindness. If you want to kill them now, aren't you biting the hand that feeds you? Xiaochun, they are two-legged monsters after all. We can't disobey our ancestors' teachings," said the old elf who had spoken earlier. Su Xiaochun glanced at him and said, "We can't disobey our ancestors' teachings, but the Mother of Fairies also taught us that we fairies are the spirits of nature. We are particular about being neutral and peaceful, being close to nature, and biting the hand that feeds us. Is this what the Mother of Fairies taught us?" The old elf was taken aback and didn't speak. The hall quieted down as pairs of eyes stared at Qin Feng. Some of them were still filled with coldness, while others had complicated expressions. If it weren't for the fact that they had saved Princess Xiaochun, they wouldn't have cared so much. However, Su Xiaochun's status in the elf tribe was very special. The elves advocated matriarchal descent, which was why they were called the Mother of the Elves. Su Xiaochun's lineage had the purest elven bloodline. She was the only pure-blooded princess of the elves. In the future, she would be nurtured as the mother of the elves and be the ruler of the entire elven race. Her position and life were naturally extremely important, and her words carried a lot of weight in certain aspects, even though she was not the mother of the elves yet. Because of this, they couldn't make up their minds and didn't kill a few two-legged monsters on the spot. Shu Chongkong had an unreadable smile on his face. He looked at his daughter with gratification in his eyes. "Everyone, if you have any objections, feel free to voice them out. We can discuss them amongst ourselves." He looked around and smiled. "Father, what else is there to discuss? We can't bite the hand that feeds us," Su Xiaochun said. Shu Chongkong looked at his daughter and smiled. "Xiaochun, we can't disobey the teachings of our ancestors. We can't coexist with the two-legged monsters. Have you forgotten how the elves came here?" Qin Feng narrowed his eyes. He deeply felt that this elf patriarch was unfathomable. He seemed to want to follow the ancestral teachings and kill the few of them, but his tone obviously didn't have much killing intent. He had been observing the reactions of everyone present. Su Xiaochun was speechless. Indeed, she did not refute this point. In the eyes of the elves, two-legged monsters were evil beyond redemption. If they encountered them, they would definitely kill them. She used to think so too, but after interacting with them, she deeply realized that two-legged monsters didn't seem to be that scary. They were just as kind as she was. She used gratitude as an excuse, but they used the teachings of their ancestors. For a moment, they were in a deadlock. Seeing this, Qin Feng gently pushed Su Xiaochun away and looked at Shu Chongkong calmly. "Qin Feng, don't talk nonsense. The elves hate you two-legged monsters very much," she reminded in a low voice. Qin Feng smiled at her. Finally, he looked around the room and said loudly, "I want to ask everyone here, in your lifetime, who has really come into contact with a human, the two-legged monster in your mouth? The ancestral teachings say that if we encounter a two-legged monster, we must kill it." "That's enough," the radical old elf snorted. Qin Feng looked at him and shook his head. "We can't ignore the words of our ancestors, but we also have to look at the current situation. There was a period in the past when humans and elves might have existed in a dark age. But times are changing. Humans and elves are also developing. Years have changed, and that dark age has long passed. Humans and elves may not be natural enemies and can't coexist. How can elves and humans coexist? If we were on opposing sides, you would still say this now, the old elf said. That's right. Our ancestors used their battle and blood to tell us that humans can't get close. Otherwise, we will repeat that tragic period. You're just a yellow-haired child. What do you know? How can the grudges between our races be resolved with just a few words? Some old elves spoke out. They were amused by Qin Feng's words. Qin Feng shook his head slightly. He naturally knew that no matter how much he said, it would be difficult to change these old-fashioned antiques in a short period of time. He did not say much in this regard. Instead, he suddenly asked, "You should know that I entered your ancestral land. I'll apologize here first. I didn't mean to walk in. What I want to say is that none of you care how a two-legged monster like me could enter your ancestral land and return safely." His words caused the hall to instantly quiet down. Numerous pairs of eyes stared at him with puzzlement in their eyes. Indeed, the elven ancestral land was extremely dangerous. Only during special times could one enter it. Otherwise, even if the elves entered, they would be in danger. How could a two-legged monster walk out so easily? The eyes of the group of elves flickered. Shu Changkong slowly frowned, then asked, "How did you walk out from there?" "Because your mother of the elves owed my ancestors something," Qin Feng said. The hall suddenly fell silent. Then, angry laughter rang out. "Ignorant child, how can the great mother of the elves be blasphemed by you? You're courting death." A powerful elf rushed over and suppressed Qin Feng with his powerful spiritual energy. Qin Feng's expression did not change. He calmly raised his right hand. A black light burst out from his palm and shattered the spiritual energy. The powerful elf's body shook, then he retreated quickly. "Arrogant brat, how dare you be so fierce in our elven race?" Suddenly, several more powerful elves attacked. "Back off!" Shu Changkong shouted softly. Spiritual energy surged forth, causing the elves' attacks to stop. The elves retreated, but their eyes were still cold. Shu Changkong stared at Qin Feng, then said, "Continue." Qin Feng smiled and took out the cyan token. He waved it in front of the elves and said, "I wonder if the elf clan's patriarch and everyone here are familiar with this token." In the hall, the atmosphere suddenly froze. All the elves stared at the green token in Qin Feng's hand. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. "This is the Elven Death Order?" Shu Changkong stared at the token in Qin Feng's hand without blinking, then asked, "How did you get this token?" "Your mother of the elves gave it to me," Qin Feng said. The hall suddenly became silent. Following that, heavy breathing sounds rose and fell. Looking at the green token in Qin Feng's hand, there was excitement in their eyes and tears were also flickering in their eyes. "Elven Death Order, the mother of the elves is not completely dead. She is still protecting us." Chapter 357. Leaving helplessly seeing Shu Changkong and the elves who were releasing killing intent towards him kneeling down, Qin Feng was slightly stunned. He looked at the token in his hand and thought, "This token is so useful." He originally thought that they would at least not make things difficult for them after seeing this token. Now, it seemed that he had underestimated the power of this token. "Patriarch Shu, please rise," Qin Feng quickly said. "I don't want to ask you for anything, I just want you to not make things difficult for me and my friends. The mother of the elves gave me this token, I guess that's what she meant." "You have seen the mother of the elves?" the old elf said, tears flowing down his old eyes. Qin Feng nodded. The group of elves was excited. They had always thought that the mother of the elves had passed away long ago. Since ancient times, no one had ever seen the mother of the elves. They could only enter the ancestral land during special times, and all they saw was the stone statue. Sometimes they even doubted the existence of the Mother of the Elves. Now, it seemed that the Mother of the Elves really existed, and had always been protecting them. The group of elves looked at Qin Feng differently. They no longer had hatred and killing intent. No matter what his identity was, being able to see the Mother of the Elves and receive the Elven Death Order from the Mother of the Elves was enough to show that he had received the Mother of the Elves' approval. Xu Xiaochun also looked at Qin Feng in a daze. Even she, who was raised as the Mother of the Elves, did not have any reaction in front of the stone statue. How did a two-legged monster get the Mother of the Elves' approval? Patriarch Xu, seniors, I don't want to criticize the teachings of your ancestors, but the darkness of the past should not have lasted until now. In the era of the Mother of the Elves, elves and humans could fight side by side and coexist peacefully. My ancestor had a good relationship with the elves. He left an item for the Mother of the Elves to preserve, hoping that one day, his descendants would come here to accept his inheritance. This is why I can enter your ancestral land and see the Mother of the Elves. Qin Feng looked at the elves and said slowly, "So you are the descendant of my ancestor's friend." The very old elf said, "The great Mother of the Elves gave you the Elven Death Order, which is already a sign of her approval of you. On the contrary, we went a bit overboard." Qin Feng was relieved that the elves' attitude towards him had improved. At least they weren't in any danger here. Ah, I didn't expect the Mother of the Fairies to still be here. It's really a great blessing for the fairies. Men, prepare the food and wine. Let's get drunk today. Xu Changkong laughed heartily. Soon enough, Tan Xian, Jing Wui, and exploding blossoms were brought over. The latter had obviously been treated by someone, and his injuries were more than half healed. Tonight, the Light Elves' territory was brightly lit. Orioles sang and swallows danced. It had to be said that the elves were extremely good at singing and dancing. The men were handsome and the women were pretty. However, their tastes were indeed very different from that of humans. Qin Feng and the others felt uncomfortable. Fortunately, there were careful people who had hunted many spirit beasts. There were barbecued and stewed. Soon, a fragrant aroma filled the air. As soon as Exploding Blossom saw food, her eyes lit up and she gorged herself. During the banquet, some of the elders of the elves would ask about what had happened in the ancestral land from time to time. Qin Feng knew what they were thinking, so he didn't hide anything about the Mother of the Fairies. After a few cups of wine, Qin Feng felt a bit dizzy. He left the lively place and felt the cold wind blow. His swollen head gradually sobered up. He looked at the boundless darkness, and his eyes gradually deepened. He knew that the Light Elves' situation wasn't good from their conversation. The Dark Elves had made contact with the people from the Imperial capital, and according to what they knew, there were also many super powerhouses. Qin Feng knew that the main reason why the Imperial capital had allied with the Light Elves was to capture him. He originally thought that he could escape the Imperial capital's pursuit by escaping into the 100,000 barren mountains. Now, it seemed that it wouldn't be so easy. Moreover, now that they were involved with the Light Elves, this matter would be even more difficult to resolve. "You are thinking about the Imperial capital." Suddenly, a soft voice sounded. Qin Feng turned his head and saw Tan Xian sitting on a tree branch, looking at the pitch-black stars. His usual lazy smile was replaced by calmness. Qin Feng jumped on the tree and sat down, looking up at the sky. "Do you think we should stay out of this or help the Light Elves unify the Elven race? From a personal standpoint, we shouldn't get involved in the Elven race's internal affairs." Tan Xian shook his head, then changed the topic. "But from a public standpoint, their ancestors and our ancestors belonged to the same camp. We shouldn't just stand by and watch." Qin Feng didn't hide the fact that he had entered the Elven race's territory from Tan Xian and the others. Qin Feng was silent for a while. After a long time, he sighed. If we stay, I don't know what will happen. To be honest, he didn't think that the Light Elves had much of a chance of winning. After all, the difference between the two sides wasn't that big. Now that the Dark Elves had allied with the Imperial capital and many nearby Spirit Beast clans, their overall strength had increased. If they helped the Light Elves, once they were defeated, they wouldn't be able to live either. Without the Wood Elven Mother's inheritance, Qin Feng wouldn't have had so many misgivings and would have just left. But now, he couldn't do that. The Elven race had a good relationship with his ancestors. If the Light Elves were to be destroyed because of this, he would feel uneasy. Yes, if we stay, once we are defeated, I'm afraid we will also die without a burial ground. Tan Xian turned to look at Jingwei, who was happily laughing with Su Xiaochun, and sighed. He might not choose to leave. Qin Feng was silent. His eyes flickered, no one knew what he was thinking. The night gradually deepened. Qin Feng lay on the bed, unable to fall asleep. He was still hesitating whether or not to leave. After thinking for a long time, he sat up and operated the divine wood technique. Strands of wood energy were poured into the jade pendant, nourishing Qin Yao and Gong Xiaoxi's vitality. Even with the divine wood technique, if he wanted to restore their consciousness, it wouldn't be done overnight. It would take time. After operating for nearly an hour, Qin Feng stopped and quietly lay on the bed. Sister Xiaoxi, one day I'll resurrect you. The next day, Qin Feng was woken up by the commotion outside. He sat up abruptly, his eyes sharp. He walked out of the tree hole. It was already a mess outside. There were teams of Light Elves everywhere, each of them holding a weapon in their hands. Their expressions were solemn as they left from different directions. The Dark Elves have already begun their attack. Tan Xian walked over. Qin Feng looked at him and the explosion and asked, "Where's Jingwei?" Tan Xian shook his head and sighed. He said, "We can't gamble everything here. He told us to leave first." Qin Feng was startled. Jingwei still made such a choice. The two spoke at the same time. Then, they looked at each other, nodded slightly, and left. Chapter 358. Crisis. The battle between the Light Elves and the Dark Elves wasn't small. Because many experts from the Imperial capital had joined in, the Light Elves were quickly defeated. But the Light Elves had Guardian of Light enter the battlefield, and barely managed to stop their decline. But the situation on their side was still very unstable. In a forest within the Light Elves' territory, Jingwei and a few Light Elves who weren't weak quickly left with Su Xiaochun. "Big Brother E, why didn't Qin Feng and the others come?" Su Xiaochun followed behind Jingwei and asked him for the third time. Jingwei cautiously scanned the surroundings. After confirming that there was no danger, he brought Su Xiaochun to hide in a dense forest. "Xiaochun, do you still remember what we said when we first met?" Jingwei pulled Su Xiaochun's hand and said softly, "We were chased into the 100,000 barren mountains. It was also a coincidence that we ended up here. They had to leave here because they all had their own missions. They couldn't stay here forever." Su Xiaochun blankly looked at Jingwei and asked, "Qin Feng and the others all left? They had to leave?" Jingwei nodded and said, "We survived until now because many people sacrificed their lives. Our lives don't only belong to us." Su Xiaochun's eyes gradually dimmed. She lowered her head and felt very depressed. Seeing this, Jingwei patted her head and sighed. He immediately restrained his emotions and cautiously watched the situation outside. The battle lasted for a long time before it gradually stopped. Jingwei ordered 2 Light Elves to go out and scout the situation. Not long after, they returned with a group of Light Elves. "Big Brother!" Su Xiaochun was overjoyed and wanted to run out, but Jingwei quickly pulled her back. "What's wrong?" She stared blankly and turned to look at Jingwei. The latter's eyes flickered, but he didn't answer. But the other Light Elves behind him quickly greeted and loudly said, "Your Highness, the princess is here." Xiaochun. Shu Ling's eyes lit up and he hurried over. Looking at the approaching Shu Ling, Jing Wui frowned and sighed in his heart. He came from an assassin organization and was best at hiding, ambushing, and had a keen sense of danger. He always felt that it was too dangerous to walk out without any preparation. But now that things had come to this, it was too late for him to say anything. He could only reach out his hand to Su Xiaochun. Shu Ling was relieved to see that Shu Xiaochun was fine. She looked at Jing Wui gratefully and said, "Thank you." Jing Wui waved his hand and asked, "What's the situation now?" Shu Ling shook her head inwardly. With the addition of the experts from the imperial capital, the overall strength of the Dark Elves has increased greatly. Fortunately, we still have the Guardians of Light. We can still hold on for a while. This is also not a long-term solution, Jing Wui said, shaking his head. Not bad. Shu Ling nodded, then looked at Su Xiaochun and said, "Father has the same concern, so he wants Xiaochun to hide in the ancestral land for a while. Xiaochun is the most qualified person to become the mother of fairies. As long as she is fine, the fairy race will never disappear." Jing Wui knew why Shu Ling said so much to him. After a moment of silence, he said, "Qin Feng and the others have already left. There are more important things waiting for them to complete." Shu Ling's eyes dimmed and she sighed. She originally wanted Qin Feng to hide in the ancestral land with Shu Xiaochun. After all, he was the only one who had been recognized by the Mother of Fairies. But now that he had left, no one could enter the ancestral land, not even the fairies. Unless it was a special period, they would get lost inside. Whoosh! Suddenly, a beam of light shot over. Jing Wui and Shu Ling's expressions changed drastically. They moved at the same time and dispersed the beam of light. Then, their faces darkened. A few people walked over from the forest. They were all very powerful. A dark elf, a nightwalker, and 3 experts from the imperial capital, Xianyuan Owl, Xianyuan Xiantian, and Ouyang Yi. "Only you?" Seeing Jing Wui, Xianyuan Owl's eyes narrowed. Deicide flashed in his hand, and a fierce spiritual energy surged out of his body. Jing Wui stared at the 4 people with a serious expression. His hands were slightly trembling. This time, he was in trouble. He had fought with them before, and none of them were weaker than him. Now that 4 of them had come, the threat was too great. Shu Ling's face also darkened. She had fought with them before, so she naturally knew how powerful they were. "Brother Jing, take Xiaochun and leave." Shu Ling whispered, "If they can enter here, it means that they have broken through our defense. The reinforcements of the Light Fairies shouldn't be here in a short time. Take Xiaochun into the ancestral land. Xiaochun's bloodline is the purest. At least there is a chance." Hearing this, Jing Wui smiled bitterly. "Among the 4 of them, 3 of them are targeting me. Do you think they will give me a chance? Since it has come to this, I can only fight." Jing Wui's body shook, and a strong spiritual energy surged out. Seeing this, the Nightwalker smiled faintly and said to Xianyuan Owl and the others, "Brothers, remember our agreement. As long as you help us capture Xiaochun, the Light Fairies will unite. We will do our best to help you capture the remaining people. Let's do it. I have fought with them before. Even if victory is in our hands, we can't give them the slightest chance," Xianyuan Owl said. "Of course." The underworld walker laughed out loud. Spiritual energy surged around his body and whizzed towards them. At the same time, Xianyuan Shao and the other 2 also rushed over. Powerful spiritual energy exploded. "Guards of Light, fight with me!" Shu Ling shouted and fought with the Nightwalker. Yes! More than a dozen Guards of Light responded in unison, releasing a strong power to block Ouyang Yi. Jing Wui wanted to block Xianyuan Owl, but Xianyuan Xiantian stood in front of him and sneered, "The royal family has really miscalculated for an assassin organization like you. But your opponent this time is me." He stared at Jing Wui indifferently and was not in a hurry to attack. Jing Wui did not have time to talk nonsense with him. He had been paying attention to Xianyuan Owl, and his heart was heavy. Although there were only 4 of them, each of them was very strong. He and Shu Ling could block 2 of them, and the dozen guards of light could block 1. But the remaining 1 could not be blocked by the light fairies. Facing a powerhouse of this level, unless there were enough powerhouses of the small heaven realm or a super powerhouse of the 9th heaven realm, it was impossible to block him. Xianyuan Owl was entangled with more than a dozen light fairies. He frowned slightly. Did you really leave? After fighting for a while, Qin Feng and the others still did not appear. Xianyuan Owl lost his patience, shook off a few light fairies, and rushed toward Xiaochun. Xiao! Jing Wui quickly rushed over and attacked Xianyuan Owl. The latter struck out with a palm and blocked all of his attacks. Chapter 359. Confrontation with Xianyuan Owl. Jing Wui had just stabilized his body when he heard Xianyuan Xuantian's voice. His pupils shrank and his figure flashed, leaving behind afterimages. He quickly dodged, but his arm was still pierced. Good movement technique. Xianyuan Xuantian's face revealed an excited expression. This kind of opponent made his blood boil. Brother Xianyuan, you're a bit slow. When the Dark Walker saw that Xianyuan Owl still hadn't caught Shu Xiaochun, his tone revealed some dissatisfaction. Brother Dark, I want to remind you that we are cooperating, not your subordinates. Xianyuan Owl calmly dodged the crazy attacks of the light spirits, and replied. The Dark Walker's eyes darkened, but he immediately smiled and said, I'm sorry, but the experts of the light spirits might be coming soon. Brother Xianyuan, please be careful. After all, this is our main goal. Xianyuan Owl frowned and sighed in his heart. His attacks suddenly became fierce, sending a dozen light spirits flying. Then, in a flash, he appeared in front of Shu Xiaochun. The long sword in his hand flashed and chopped down towards her head. Shu Ling saw the situation and immediately rushed over, but she was firmly held back by the Dark Walker. She simply couldn't make it in time. Xianyuan Owl, what are you doing? I want to catch her alive. The Dark Walker shouted. Jing Wui was rushing over as well, but Xianyuan Xiantian blocked his path. Compared to falling into their hands, I think you'd rather die. I'm sorry. Xianyuan Owl coldly said and heavily chopped down with his long sword. Shu Xiaochun looked at the incomparably fierce long sword that was chopping down towards her, and slowly closed her eyes. She couldn't avoid being locked on by this kind of expert. Sister! Jing Wui's eyes were bloodshot and the blood-colored spiritual energy around his body seemed to be boiling. He shook off Xianyuan Xiantian and quickly rushed over. However, he was too far away and Xianyuan Owl wouldn't give anyone a chance to save her. However, when his long sword was less than 10 centimeters away from Shu Xiaochun's head, it suddenly stopped. It seemed that he had suddenly pulled back, or it seemed that something had stopped him. Everyone stopped what they were doing when they saw this scene. Their eyes were filled with confusion and bewilderment. Only Jing Wui heaved a heavy sigh of relief. You two fellows! He shook his head and smiled. He knew who had made a move. Su Xiaochun stared blankly at this scene. Her mind was a mess. What was going on? Xianyuan Owl was also stunned for a moment. Then, he came back to his senses and smiled faintly. You're finally here. Show yourself. This kind of concealment is useless against people at our level, Qin Feng. Qin Feng? Shu Xiaochun's eyes suddenly widened. She quickly glanced around, but there was no sign of Qin Feng. Ha ha! To be able to deal such a heavy blow to an innocent person, as expected of a member of the royal family. Just as she was at a loss, a sneer sounded in front of her. Then, a figure slowly appeared in front of her. This figure knelt on one knee and put his palms together to block the long sword. Shu Xiaochun was all too familiar with this figure. Qin Feng. She widened her eyes, which were filled with mist. You didn't leave. I left, but I'm back. One can't avoid another mission in order to complete one task. Am I right, Fourth Prince? Qin Feng raised his head and stared at Xianyuan Owl. His spiritual energy suddenly erupted. Xianyuan Shao drifted out of the room with a faint smile on his face. He said softly, "There are some things that you can't avoid even if you run away. Where's Tan Xian?" Qin Feng flipped his hand and the sky-splitting axe appeared in his hand. His fighting spirit soared. Xianyuan Owl's eyes gradually became serious. He tightened his grip on the sword. Facing Qin Feng, he didn't dare to be careless. Seeing this, the Nightwalker couldn't help but feel angry. He didn't care if Qin Feng and the others left or came back. He only cared about whether or not they could catch Shu Xiaochun. It was a great opportunity, but it was wasted by these people from the imperial capital. If it wasn't for their cooperation, he would have cursed out loud. For Xianyuan Owl and the others, this was the best result. They didn't care if they could catch Shu Xiaochun. Their goal was Qin Feng and the others. The main reason they cooperated with the Dark Elves was to catch Qin Feng and the others. If the Dark Elves unified the Elven clan, they would help them to hunt down Qin Feng and the others. However, it was also possible that the Dark Elves would turn against them. After all, the Dark Elves couldn't be trusted. If that happened, the Imperial Capital's people would have no choice but to retreat. Xianyuan Owl couldn't not be wary of this. Hence, he didn't rush to make a move against Shu Xiaochun. Instead, he waited for Qin Feng and the others to arrive. It could be said that the Imperial Capital's cooperation with the Dark Elves had their own goals. This caused them to disagree with Qin Feng and the others when it came to dealing with the Dark Elves. This cooperation wasn't ironclad. The appearance of Qin Feng and the others also allowed Shu Ling to breathe a sigh of relief. He had seen how powerful Qin Feng and the others were. It wouldn't be difficult for them to deal with Xianyuan Owl and the Nightwalker. With their addition, the balance of power between the two sides immediately tilted. Whoosh! Qin Feng held the sky-splitting axe in his hand and appeared in front of Xianyuan Owl like a bolt of lightning. The sky-splitting axe smashed down on his head. Xianyuan Owl didn't dodge. His body was like a leaf in the wind, fluttering and flickering. In the blink of an eye, he crossed paths with the charging black figure. At that moment, the longsword in Xianyuan Owl's hand slashed horizontally in an extremely natural manner, borrowing the momentum of his movement technique. A few tiny rays of golden sword energy shot out. They were the first to leave their swords. They slashed towards Qin Feng's neck. Qin Feng's swift attack came to an abrupt halt. The sky-splitting axe flashed. Following a ding-dang sound and some tiny sparks, the few golden sword chi did not even manage to block Qin Feng's attack and completely dissipated. After blocking the golden sword energy, Qin Feng slightly raised his eyes. His indifferent eyes glanced at Xianyuan Owl who was passing by. He waved his arm. The sky-splitting axe carried a ferocious force and smashed horizontally behind him. Feeling the oppressive force behind him, Xianyuan Owl's expression didn't change. The longsword in his hand stabbed out violently. The longsword left a golden arc in the empty air. The sharp tip of the sword seemed to have penetrated the obstruction of the air. With a crisp ding sound, the tip of the sword pointed straight at the sky-splitting axe that was smashing horizontally. When the two collided, the ferocious force contained in the sky-splitting axe caused the slender longsword to be pressed into an extremely hair-raising arc. The thrilling appearance of the sword that was about to break caused some surprise to appear on Xianyuan Owl's face. The long sword in his hand wasn't an ordinary magic treasure. After being infused with spiritual power, it was able to withstand an extremely large amount of gravity. And the longsword was bent at the first contact. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the force contained in the gray axe was. And in direct contact, he could also feel the special fluctuation from Qin Feng's axe. In an instant, it caused the spiritual power in his body to stagnate for a moment. However, the sword in his hand wasn't an ordinary item. Although it was bent into such a dangerous arc, it didn't break. When the tip of the sword was about to touch Xianyuan Owl's arm, the latter's foot lightly stomped on the ground. The golden light on the long sword soared. The sudden surge of power bounced the axe away with a bang. With the help of the rebound force of the two, Xianyuan Owl flew into the air. Endless golden light seeped in from all directions. Chapter 360. To resort to trickery under the burning of the fire, the golden light that filled the sky gradually dissipated. On the contrary, the fire burned brightly and spread toward Xianyuan Owl like a prairie fire. The latter's face darkened. His power of metal was completely suppressed by Qin Feng's power of fire. Taking a deep breath, Xianyuan Owl's long sword floated in front of him. His hands quickly formed a seal, and as the seal was formed, a golden light shone behind him. The long sword suddenly turned golden, and a shocking wave of spiritual energy swept out. Qin Feng's expression gradually turned serious as he watched this scene. The previous head-on exchange had made him realize how difficult it was to deal with Xianyuan Owl. Among the 8 princes, his strength was definitely among the top few. His drooping palms suddenly straightened, and spiritual light spiraled around his fingertips, causing the air to violently ripple. Golden God Sword, light of the sword spirit. As Xianyuan Owl's voice fell, a golden sword light burst out. Heaven-devouring finger! Qin Feng jabbed out with his finger. The heaven-devouring finger erupted, and a beam of finger light shot out. At the moment when the sword light and the finger light collided, a terrifying shock wave spread out. The golden light and the black light were swept up, turning into a golden and black storm that wreaked havoc in the world. Suddenly, Xianyuan Owl rushed out of the storm, golden light blooming on his fist. Qin Feng also punched out, his black spirit power surging. The two of them streaked across the sky like 2 beams of light. Then, they violently collided with each other. Before their fists came into contact, the ferocious fists had already collided with each other. Sonic booms resounded unceasingly. Numerous frightening forces crazily spread out. The strength of the forces actually caused the empty space to tremble. The power of the Golden Dragon. Divine Dragon Technique. All of a sudden, a golden dragon emerged from Xianyuan Owl's arm, while an illusory divine dragon emerged from Qin Feng's body. The 2 dragons collided and tore at each other. The power of yin and yang. Qin Feng abruptly spread his fingers. Black and white spiritual energy filled the air, bursting with corrosive power. Xianyuan Owl's golden spiritual energy sizzled violently as it shrank. The latter's expression changed slightly. Suddenly, an even greater golden light erupted from his fist. Devour the golden dragon. The golden light transformed into a huge mouth, which instantly devoured Qin Feng's black and white spiritual power. Rumble. The attacks released by the 2 of them collided to the greatest extent. A terrifying gust of wind spread out, and the 2 of them were sent flying. While flying backwards, Qin Feng quickly stabilized his body and formed a seal with his hands. Black and white spiritual energy intertwined and hugged each other. The power of yin and yang heaven-swallowing hand. A large black and white hand stretched out of the yin-yang embrace diagram and grabbed at Xianyuan Owl as fast as lightning. Xianyuan Owl's expression changed. He opened his hands and golden spiritual energy swept across the sky. Heavenly Emperor Bell Divine Skill, Heavenly Emperor Defense. The golden spiritual energy turned into a huge Emperor's bell and enveloped Xianyuan Owl's body. At the same time, the black and white hand stretched out on the golden bell. Dang! Following a deafening metallic sound, the Emperor's bell started to ripple wildly. A crack quietly appeared on the Emperor's bell. Bang! Along with the Emperor's bell shattering, the power in the black and white hand was also used up. Qin Feng pushed his hands forward. In an instant, the air rippled and a sharp sound of something breaking through the air rang out. Mental energy weapons shot towards Xianyuan Owl. The latter's expression was solemn. Golden light surged above his hands. Then, he suddenly put his palms together. The golden light was extremely powerful at this moment. As he suddenly separated his hands, a golden wheel appeared. As it rotated, it brought about an extremely powerful defensive force. Emperor's Wheel Divine Skill, Divine Wheel Protection. On the golden divine wheel, lines of golden lines wriggled. Then, the divine wheel rapidly expanded and enveloped Xianyuan Shao. As it spun, any spiritual weapons that got close to it would be destroyed. Furthermore, there were beams of golden light that whizzed towards Qin Feng like a rain of light. Heavenly Water Screen. Boundless power of water gathered rapidly, forming a huge water screen in front of Qin Feng. Within the water screen, the power of water surged crazily, killing the golden rain of light that rushed into it. Golden light flickered within the water screen. Suddenly, a black figure charged out. Qin Feng clenched his fist toward Xianyuan Owl, who was not far away. Heavenly Water Domain. Walala! Before Xianyuan Owl could react, a huge water ball appeared out of thin air and enveloped him. At the same time, Qin Feng also rushed into the heavenly water domain. His mental energy turned into sharp weapons and swept towards Xianyuan Owl. At the same time, he also rushed over. The force contained in his fist caused the surrounding water to ripple violently. However, just as he was about to hit Xianyuan Owl, a golden light suddenly bloomed from the latter's body. When Qin Feng's fist landed, he felt a powerful force erupting from Xianyuan Owl's body. Clang! 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 The mental energy weapons hit his body and made crisp clanging sounds. However, none of them broke through the golden light's defense. Qin Feng was just about to launch a second attack when he saw the golden light on Xianyuan Owl's body suddenly expand. Qin Feng's pupils shrank. He quickly retreated and left the heavenly water domain. At the same time, a huge heavenly Emperor's pagoda rose from the center of the heavenly water domain. It directly broke through the heavenly water domain. This was formed by spiritual energy and not the real heavenly Emperor's pagoda. However, the degree of solidification was almost the same as the real heavenly Emperor's pagoda. The huge heavenly Emperor's pagoda stood there, flickering with golden light and emitting a majestic aura. It's mixed with the power of gold. Qin Feng was shocked. He was secretly amazed at Xianyuan Owl's ability. He was actually able to fuse the gold god technique and the heavenly Emperor's pagoda to this extent. His hands quickly moved in front of him. The fire god technique was activated. The power of fire surged and turned into a huge fire that enveloped Xianyuan Owl. The power of fire didn't pose much of a threat to the heavenly Emperor's pagoda formed by spiritual energy. However, it could suppress the power of gold and even strengthen his power of fire. Xianyuan Shao also sensed the situation and hurriedly exploded. The explosive ferocious force blasted the power of fire into nothingness. His face was slightly gloomy. His power of gold was completely restrained by Qin Feng's power of fire. He couldn't use it at all. With a whoosh, he waved his arm and a golden light burst out. At this moment, Qin Feng's skin tightened as he sensed danger. Under his gaze, the golden light suddenly expanded and turned into a huge heavenly Emperor's clock. This is a fake heavenly Emperor's clock. Qin Feng's pupils contracted. He instantly understood that this wasn't formed by spiritual energy. It was a fake heavenly Emperor's clock. It was similar to the fake heavenly Emperor's pagoda used by the Tiger Knight that day. However, although they were both fake, different people used them. The power was on a completely different level. After all, the difference between the Tiger Knight and Xianyuan Owl was too great. The power contained in this fake Heavenly Emperor's clock was far greater than the fake Heavenly Emperor's pagoda used by the Tiger Knight that day. Chapter 361. Explosion attacked the fake Emperor Bell, and the savage peak collided fiercely in the air. The world seemed to be silent for a moment. Then, like a volcanic eruption, a destructive shock wave spread out crazily. Everywhere it passed, everything turned into nothingness. Even the clouds in the sky had been shaken clean. Everything was as poor as a church mouse. As the energy slowly dissipated, the fake Emperor Bell flew back and the savage peak also fell into Qin Feng's hands. Both of them were gasping for breath. Clearly, in the continuous confrontation just now, they had consumed a lot of energy. They looked at each other with gloomy eyes. Clearly, they had underestimated each other's strength. Qin Feng had always thought that the 8 princes' strength was about the same. Even if there was a discrepancy, it would be within a small range. But now, it seemed that he was wrong. This 4th prince's strength was stronger than any of the princes he had killed. He was actually able to use the skills of 3 magical tools. The imperial capital had 4 heaven-shaking magical tools: Emperor Pagoda, Emperor Bell, Emperor Wheel, and Space Mirror. It was said that each of these magical tools had their own mysterious method. Back when he had fought with the other princes, other than assassination, the other princes could only use one type of technique. However, the 4th prince had actually used 3 types of techniques in a short period of time: Emperor Pagoda, Emperor Bell, and Emperor Wheel. Even Qin Feng couldn't help but feel apprehensive. This was a very terrifying opponent. Similarly, Xianyuan Owl also had the same mentality. He had used almost everything he knew, but he still couldn't defeat Qin Feng. "I didn't expect you to be so strong. No wonder they all fell at your hand," Xianyuan Owl said with an indescribable smile on his face. "But since I was able to calculate your appearance, how could I not be prepared? The opportunity to kill you is very rare. I already missed it once, how could I miss it a second time?" Qin Feng's expression was tense. He spread out his spiritual power and opened his perception to the maximum. But he didn't discover any other experts lying in ambush nearby. "Your super powerhouses should have been held back by the Light Elves, right? Using psychological warfare against me is a bit childish." Xianyuan Owl shook his head and smiled. He seemed to know that Qin Feng didn't believe him, so he didn't say anything. He just slowly stretched out his hand. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes. The spiritual energy in his body continued to surge, spreading to his limbs and bones. A powerful force rippled out, and the air in his right palm quietly twisted. "Senior Emperor, do it!" As Xianyuan Owl waved his arm, an extremely powerful spiritual energy pressure suddenly descended. Golden light flickered in the void, and a figure filled with extremely powerful spiritual energy fluctuations slowly emerged. Elder Huang. Qin Feng's pupils contracted. Even such an important figure from the royal clan had appeared. Xu Ling and Jing Wui's hearts shook. A 9th stage heavenly master was enough to obliterate everyone present. The Nightwalker breathed a sigh of relief. Originally, because of Qin Feng's appearance, their situation had been reversed, but with the appearance of a supermaster from the 2-legged monster's side, everything had come to an end. "These guys really can't be trusted." A gloomy light flashed across his eyes as he became even more wary of Xianyuan Owl's group. They had always thought that the other side had only brought 3 9th-stage heavenly masters. They hadn't expected there to be another one. The Nightwalker even wondered how many masters they had brought with them to the 100,000 barren mountains. He couldn't help but be on guard. 9th-stage heavenly masters were all supermasters. Once this level of masters reached a certain level, it would be a disaster for any of the clans in the 100,000 barren mountains. As the Nightwalker's thoughts raced, Elder Huang attacked Qin Feng, his figure appearing beside Qin Feng like a ghost. This time, he didn't act carelessly. Because he was worried that Qin Feng would act like that day, he had used his full strength to cripple his cultivation. A ninth stage heavenly master attacking with all his strength was naturally a devastating disaster for Qin Feng, so he understood that any method he used was useless. So, looking at Elder Huang who had suddenly appeared beside him, Yang Kai simply stretched out his right hand and in the next moment, an endless black qi gushed out from his palm and surrounded Elder Huang. At first glance, it looked like Elder Huang had rushed in. Immediately after, a pitiful scream rang out as a figure was sent flying backwards, his body covered in black qi, as if he was being burned by black flames. Elder Huang screamed, his eyes filled with horror. "Boy, what is that thing in your hand?" He couldn't be blamed for losing his composure. If he hadn't reacted quickly, he would have been dragged into the endless darkness. On the imperial capital's side, Xianyuan Owl and the others were shocked. They couldn't believe that Elder Huang was injured by Qin Feng even though he had used his full strength. How was this possible? If he had such strength, why would he need to fight with them? While they were absent-minded, none of them noticed that the space not too far away from Elder Huang who was retreating explosively rippled slightly, and then a petite figure floated up into appearance. His small body trembled slightly as he directly shot toward Elder Huang, who was a short distance away. His small fist was tightly clenched as a frightening strength was brewing within it. "A little girl dares to be so arrogant?" Elder Huang sneered as he looked at the explosive figure. Although he knew that she had terrifying strength after transforming, it wasn't worth mentioning before she transformed. Elder Huang's pale and shriveled hand suddenly trembled. Suddenly, golden spiritual energy gushed out and condensed into a golden snake that was as thick as a bucket. With a flick of his finger, the golden snake shot out. Although his body was empty due to his injuries, he was still a super powerhouse in the 9th heavenly stage. Even if it was just a casual attack, it wasn't something that someone in the small heavenly stage could block. The golden snake instantly shot forward. Feeling the violent energy contained in the former's body, Big Flower Explosion's face turned slightly solemn. She slowly opened her small fist, and her 5 fingers grabbed at the golden snake that was shooting toward her. Bang! As the cry sounded, the 5 fingers of the Great Flower Explosion clenched tightly. Immediately, an invisible ripple spread out in a lightning-like manner. The space 10 meters in front of him appeared to have been kneaded into a ball by an extremely frightening strength. The golden color that had coincidentally passed through this place was also crushed into pieces by the shrinking space. After getting rid of the entanglement of the golden snake, the tip of the Great Flower Explosion's foot pressed on the empty air. There seemed to be a weak spear glow that flashed and disappeared. Soon after, her petite body appeared in front of Elder Huang in a ghost-like manner. She twisted her waist and her delicate leg drew a half-moon arc as she violently kicked at the latter's head. The explosive figure's leg was slender and weak. It looked as if it would be broken with a gentle grip. However, if anyone overlooked the terrifying power contained within, then they would probably be taught a painful lesson. When Elder Huang fought with others, he naturally would not make such a low-level mistake. When he first saw the Big Flower explode his golden snake with a single punch, he knew that this seemingly weak little girl, even if she did not transform, had an extremely terrifying strange strength. Therefore, he naturally couldn't choose to ignore or underestimate the explosive figure's close-range attack. The shriveled hand quickly danced, and a surge of golden energy suddenly surged out from his body. In the end, it condensed into a golden light shield on the left side of his body. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.